career as a
interesting question.
rapist?
What?
74, 65, 61, 6D.
That's number one.
Oh, imagine that being a Monty Python joke. Do you have your own cross, or would you like one provided?
We've been privatised.
Well, I don't know. Like, Jamie could be a fetishist for all I know. And, like, I'm not going to judge him for it much, but at the same time...
Well, yeah, but I guess, yeah. Me be you heathen bollocks. I feel like I always end up being the villain in my own streams. Thank you.
Don't let anyone know I said that.
Oh, I won't. They'll just hear me saying thank you for some kind of compliment you gave. Just do it on my tire pit. That's such a scruff. Hello, everybody. It's the most glamorous night of the year. Hello to people who will receive an award for best chat community today, and others. Look at the smartly dressed boys. Look at us. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. Of course, we're dressed up. It's the most glamorous night of the year.
The most smartly dressed boy on this podcast is my Squirtle figurine.
He's putting us all to shame. As always, can you hear us? I assume you can, but please let us know if you can hear us, because that will be important for the next hour and a half to 2 hours. Or I just got a little notification saying JTTG is live as a guest on the Bunyip Man stream.
No way!
Yeah. Wow.
What a dickhead. He was supposed to be here tonight and he's gone live on some other person's channel.
So this is the first time I've used that tagging feature in the title. And that means that people who follow you just got a notification that you're on my stream.
Let's be honest. Everyone here already knows.
That's true. But it means that I'm going to tag you in the title of every stream I do, whether you're in it or not.
I don't know. I mean,
no, I won't do that. I'm not a liar. I'm an honest man.
Well, just to avoid the lying aspect, at least have me show up for 30 seconds in all of your streams.
I'll just have a picture of you. I'll just put a photograph of you.
Yeah, a little portrait of me in your shelves over there. That'd be good.
Oh, well, welcome everybody. Welcome Steltec and Koto and his cursedness and Nomta. Welcome all to the most glamorous night of the year. That's right. It is the Bunyip Review Awards for 2022. We are going to be giving out best TV show, best game, best movie, and best and worst Netflix Randomiser things for last year. I should do it. So this is actually going to be an audio podcast. So I should probably, are we going to do I should do a proper start to it. I hadn't really thought this far ahead. But the Twitches are working. So let's just go, shall we?
Let me just have a sip of my event wine.
Event wine. Oh, I should have got some wine. I should have got event wine. Welcome, Ray. Thank you very much. It's the most glamorous night.
Ray of Swords, welcome to this formal event, the Bunyip Awards. You may have heard of the BAFTAs, but they're second rate compared to what we're about to put on.
All right, let's get going. Okay. I know you don't use the claps, but I'm going to do it anyway. Hello and welcome to the most anticipated night of the year. Every year, it's the Bunyip Awards, the 2022 Bunyip Awards. And I am here with my glamorous co-star, Jonas. How you doing, Jonas?
Oh, I am so glam today. You can hear it in my voice. You can hear glam dripping out of my vocal cords onto the microphone. Is it glam proof or will it short out halfway? Well, I haven't read the warranty, so let's find out.
You didn't get the glam proof microphones. You knew that this was the most glamorous night of the year. You should have prepared.
Yes, but it is quite glam to then be able to say to all of your friends that you over-glammed your non-glam-proof microphone, thus proving your delivery of glam.
I actually have about six 6 separate backup microphones just so I can keep swapping them in out through the night to help with all of the overpowering glam. Enough glam chats. Let's get to the awards chat. For those of you who've not been here for one of these before, this is the award show where we give awards out for the best TV show, the best game, the best movie that we reviewed last year, and the best and worst Netflix Randomiser movies that we were forced to watch last year. It was a decent mix of particularly strong showings and particularly weak showings, I felt, across the board. There were some things that we chose to review that might be some of my favorite things ever, and also some things we reviewed that might be actively some of the worst things I've had to experience ever. Janice, how did you feel about 2022's media offering?
How do I still am kind of washing out a lot of the bad taste left in my mouth from the stand-up specials.
Right,
Like,
right.
just again, just like there were too many of them, and not all of them were good. That's how I feel about that. But yeah, maybe not nearly as bad as some of the films, which it feels even generous to call them films, but they were not stand-up comedy specials, so I guess that's the only other kind of category I could really put them in.
But you put a lot of focus on the Netflix randomizer, but
Oh, okay.
as I was
Yep.
putting things into, like, I was setting up the graphics for the stream and setting up a Google Doc that if you're watching us live on Twitch, if you type !noms NOMS, you can see a Google Doc that shows all of the potential nominees for the evening. But as I was putting together the graphics for that and setting that up, I realized I'd reviewed a fair few films that. That's quite a loud crinkling. I'll do this again for the audio podcast. As I was putting together the doc and all that stuff to put together all the potential nominees for the show, we were I noticed that I had reviewed multiple films that I really didn't like. There's definitely at least one TV show that I thought was actively awful. So I'm interested. Like, it was an interesting year, a polarizing year, I think, for me, not just in the Netflix department.
Okay, so yeah, in that case, yeah, opening up to the kind of selection, I guess I don't watch that many because I don't watch that many films per month. I do try and like watch things that I would always have had like an active interest in watching. But I guess having said that, I did start off with Prisoners of the Ghostland,
Yes.
and I think that kind of just shreds my entire opening statement to shame because I remember that film kind of being like, yep, there are moments, but it was also like a real fucking pain to watch that film from start to finish. Spoilers, I haven't picked that one for yeah, so but honestly, I'm looking back through like the films that I watched, and yeah, there's stuff there that's like gonna stay with me for like absolutely years. There's stuff that I've already forgotten I watched. So yeah, it kind of is the full spectrum.
All right. Brief pause. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to do this edit. I'm gonna grab Laura a bowl to put the sweets in so that she doesn't wrinkle the packet over and over and over again. I'll be right back. I'm gonna help because it's very loud.
I have to do some admin then because I don't have a normal I don't have a normal doc available to me where I can put my edit notes. And the thing about our normal podcast is they follow a structure where I can normally put the edit notes at the point of the podcast that thing happened in. Like when Jamie's reviewing a certain thing. Oh my God, that is loud, isn't it? That is loud. Oh, I can deal with this in post, but I can't deal with this real time. Right. Awards notes. So edit out crinkle noises in opening.
Where are you writing this?
Well, I can't write it in the doc that you've given to everyone,
Yeah.
and I didn't feel appropriate to write it in the master sheet because that's an Excel spreadsheet and not a long form text doc. So I've
Yeah.
made a doc that I've called awards notes so that I can remember that I'm going to have to go
No.
back and find these
No,
things.
it's good. It's good. It's a smart thing to do.
Also, going to have to do this. Thank you.
I bet they have to do this in the Oscars as well.
It's worse. It's worse there. We're so far, despite the delay, still the most on time media review award show that you can watch on Twitch and then listen to on all good and bad podcast platforms.
I think for the Oscars they have like Tom Cruise like crinkling sweets in the back, and then they have to be like, stop it, Tom, please. All right. Okay. I'm ready to keep going, I think.
All right. What was the topic we were generally talking about? Oh, just the offerings of stuff.
I was just about to start the actual thing. That's why I stopped it there, because I thought it was a good point.
All right.
All right. Well, let's get on with our first category, shall we? And our first category to award this year is television shows. We watched some good, we watched some bad. This year I reviewed. I'm looking at movies. This year, I reviewed Money Heist. I reviewed The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window, Murderville, Our Flag Means Death, Russian Doll Season 2, The Orville, The Pentaveret, Man vs. Bee, House of the Dragon, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, The Rehearsal, and Severance. And Jonas?
Yeah, I started the year with School of Chocolate and then Call My Agent, Ranking of Kings, Narcos, Moon Knight, Pistol, Ms. Marvel, Wellington Paranormal, The Sandman, Cyberpunk Edge Runners, Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, and Andor.
So a lot of good things in there, a lot of things that absolutely could have been our picks for the year. But Jonas and I picked our nominees that we're going to discuss. And this year's nominees for TV Show of the Year are Severance and Cyberpunk Edge Runners. So I'll talk a little bit about why I chose Severance first. There was a lot of really good stuff this year. A lot of stuff that could have been my choice. I absolutely loved Money Heist for its just sort of absurd, over the top, heisty drama-iness. I think Our Flag Means Death was one of the best LGBT stories of the year. Russian Doll Season 2 was fantastic. And House of the Dragon, brought Game of Thrones back. It brought it back. And of course, there's also The Rehearsal, which was just mind-bending. But I chose Severance because Severance to me was one of the best, just sort of most perfectly formed mystery shows I've seen in such a long time. It was entertaining, it was thrilling, it was twisty and turny, and it did that thing that I always talk about wanting in mystery shows and murder movies and things like that, which is that it was never too fast or too slow for the audience. It was just about the right pace at all times. You never felt like you were too far ahead of them, and you never felt like you were too far behind, but you were given moments where you felt like you knew something that they didn't, and then suddenly they would hit you with a twist that just made sense. The central core premise of this idea of these two split lives is just perfect for a mystery show, having effectively the same character but split into two. So sometimes you know something that one character knows and know something that the other character knows, but they don't have the whole picture and you do. It was thrilling, but it was also just a brilliant drama, a brilliant story. Outside of the mystery element of it, outside of the the twists and turns of the actual sort of premise of Severance, they were just beautiful moments of character. The love story between the two older men who work in the place, or the sort of little hints of how the world is in this world outside of this premise, but just being in a world where this exists. it was just a fascinating and brilliant idea, and just a beautiful show, and a show that knew that it was worth a second season. It put exactly as much as it should have done into its first season, and then left you wanting more. Um, a perfectly fully formed first season, but leaving you on a brilliant cliffhanger. Yeah, it was definitely my best show of the year. It might be my best show of the last few years, but we'll talk about that later on. Jonas, tell me a bit about your nominee.
Yeah, so I picked I've selected Cyberpunk Edge Runners out of my lot, and sort of just to kind of look back on the year, like Cyberpunk Edge Runners was an animated show, an anime, and there's another anime in the list there, Ranking of Kings, that I thought was particularly a strong show. I thought Andor was a really great return to the kind of Star Wars universe, especially as I would have said in the episode, it does so much without relying on the kind of the lightsabers and the Force and the overt conflict of Sith versus Jedi. Sandman just absolutely dripping production value, and just some incredible performances throughout. I think I watched some really incredible things. But Cyberpunk Edge Runners to me, I think, was quite standout in quite a lot of ways. For one, as an anime, it was it was produced and animated by Trigger Studio, who are a studio who just they always manage to bring to life these like bombastic, crazy kind of like moments of sort of conflict or action. They're just really kind of incredible at bringing spectacle to life in a way that is normally kind of done through larger than life like character movement and big kind of like delivery of poses and things like that. And classically they've been so good at the hype, they tend to kind of they don't really do the subtle like ever. Like subtle is just not their thing. Their characters tend to be quite like one tone, or just kind of like they kind of fill a purpose. And so with Trigger, you kind of what you're getting when they make a show, and then blend that with the fact that it is it's taking place in the cyberpunk universe, and cyberpunk, a video game that was just absolutely marred by production issues and technical glitches, and the expectation just absolutely was not met at the time that game came out. This was a kind of strange pairing, because cyberpunk doesn't have like giant people getting into like, it doesn't have like 60-foot mech battles or people activating like special powers and firing laser beams. It takes place, it is cyberpunk, but it is mostly people with robotic limbs doing some robotic stuff, and mostly just struggling to live their lives in this kind of capitalist corporate hellscape. And that requires a lot of subtlety. It requires a lot of subtlety to bring out the emotions of people who are downtrodden, who are struggling, who kind of find an out in their relationship with their biotics and the machinery, and how that offers them kind of like sometimes temporary happiness or a way to kind of get through life. And yet Cyberpunk Edge Runners manages to deliver on all of those aspects that kind of could have easily been overlooked or missed in a poorly kind of planned and poorly delivered show. Cyberpunk Edge Runners manages to, Trigger managed to absolutely take what they're good at, the idea of frenetic movement, the idea of kind of bombastic moments and stylish action, and they managed to blend that with the subtle kind of the smaller kind of intricacies of living in a world as harsh as cyberpunk, and they managed to tell really personal stories about just kind of really well humanized characters who I think absolutely stay with you long after the show's done. And it's just delivered in such a really great all-in-one package. There's you don't have to play the game to enjoy this show, but this show will absolutely make you fall in love with the world of cyberpunk, I think, in a way that's really quite impressive and certainly worth celebrating. So yeah, absolutely love cyberpunk, and yeah, keen to talk a bit more about it. So should we go into just talking about it a bit more openly?
Yeah. I watched Cyberpunk Edge Runners for this, and yeah, I think it's great. I think it was, it was really impressive how they went for, like, they managed to do. I mean, you talk about the subtlety, but in many ways it is incredibly unsubtle. It's like, it's loud and it's big and it's, bombastic. There's lots of like hyper violence and, like explosions and, chaotic fights. But that all makes sense in the world. Like they've managed to capture the world from the game. Like it's intrinsically built into that world in a way that, like, having played the game, seeing locations from the game in this show, it didn't feel like a reference at all. It felt like, it was being filmed in the streets of the game I played. Like the locations look the same, the characters look the same. That it really felt like that world. But in amongst that like chaotic massive drama, you're right, they managed to tell really like real personal stories. And that was like the sheer magic trick of it, right? Like you had characters, that named characters, that just die. And the way that they do that, it feels like it makes sense in that world. It builds this sort of this sort of feeling of a world where life is like almost worthless in such a visceral way, that means that stories of like escape, or stories of sort of rising up from that kind of darkness, feel all the more like powerful. Everything about, David's story in the show feels scrappy and motivated. Like he does extreme things. Everyone does extremely extreme things, but the world is so extreme that it necessitates that. And I think they did such a great job of taking the core concept of the world that Cyberpunk the game tried to make, and saying, no, this is what it is. This is the flavor for it. And in your review, we talked about, like, did you think that the TV show made the game better? Like, if you played the TV show, would you then go play the game with a new view of it? And now, having seen the show, I think absolutely, yeah. Because when you're walking through those sort of weirdly empty streets of the video game, you'll be remembering the chaotic, violent, like careless, like miserable world that the TV show created, and you will bring that to your experience with it. And I think that was really, I think that was what was really, really, truly great about it. Yeah, I know that I always joke about you bringing anime to the table to force me to watch it, but in a similar way to Odd Taxi, this genuinely surprised me, and it genuinely made the most of its medium. You couldn't have done this show live action, or you could, but it wouldn't have had the same effect. And I think that that's what's truly great about it.
Yeah, Cyberpunk Edge Runners, like it manages to portray like so many incredible themes just with its animation, right? Like people's relationship with the implants that they have to get. Like you watch David try and go through this world without any implants to a certain point in his life, and in his, through his perspective, it's not working. He's not achieving the things he wants to be achieving, and what he wants to achieve. There is sort of a there's a ceiling, right? There's like the ceiling is the fact that he's from the wrong class. He doesn't work for the right people. He doesn't have the resources or the money or the background or the living conditions to achieve the things he wants to achieve. But through basically through the right implants and taking the right kind of basically criminal jobs, he hopes to absolutely reach that kind of upper echelon of living conditions and fame and success and things like that. and it's just so beautifully portrayed in how the characters are drawn, what their emotions are like, their facial expressions. There are moments of the show that are very selectively chosen where they completely, absolutely just change the style of how that character is going to be drawn for a moment, just to kind of completely help you understand where they are mentally in that moment. The idea of cyber psychosis is such a big part of not just the cyberpunk world but this story. The idea that if you treat these implants as sort of an allegory to drugs, then overdosing is absolutely something that can happen, and in
It,
relying on them.
it's even more than that, right? Because it's about the idea of sort of, you know, the way that this society forces you to give up your humanity, that
Mm,
you can't you they've made it so that it's impossible to rise to the top without giving up your humanity or automatically having a leg up via the nature of your birth, right?
yeah.
And characters continually see the consequences of that giving up your humanity throughout the show. They keep seeing it, but they're in this situation where they either don't want to believe that, or there is no choice but to do what they do despite knowing that. And 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 the way that they explore that idea over and over again through different characters points of view, and the consequences that all of them encounter through this idea of trying to get a leg up through giving up parts of your humanity, I think is really well done. It's in many ways it's not subtle in that it's literally people giving up their humanity, but in many ways it is. In many ways it is like, direct allegories for the things that people do have to go through. And I think it does that really, really cleverly.
I think the things that it does subtly are largely to do with the relationships between its characters.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, like, classically Trigger, the kind of anime that Trigger do, relationships between characters are kind of set in stone from day one. And it's like, right, here's a hero, here's a hero, here's a hero. This person likes this person doesn't like this person. And, that's really not going to change because we've written the large parts of their personality to be presented all the time, from start to finish. Um, Whereas, and this is what surprised me about this show, was like, Trigger presented a show where there were meaningful relationships between people who were just really quite complex. Like they're in a complex world, they're dealing with complex problems. But the show, and it has a lot of that hyper violence and kind of larger than life stuff. Especially when it comes to like a guy slowing down time, going behind you, blowing up your head, the bullet firing round a corner and killing 3 people, and someone getting slashed to bits by a sword. But then at 5 minutes before that, you're kind of maybe just watching the gang kind of sit round and talk to each other a little bit about the ambitions or the relationships or what they hope to do
Mm.
in that near future. And it's just a little bit like, it's not the depth that you get with the best television that I think you and I are possibly used to, but it is a depth that absolutely stands out, not just in its genre but from its producers. And certainly at its kind of, with the visual flashiness, it is surprising to get so much kind of emotional,
Yeah,
depth.
it's interesting because you're right. There is emotional depth to what they to their like their relationships. I think I haven't seen anything else by Trigger, so maybe it is subtle for Trigger, but I wouldn't say it is subtle. Like,
Okay.
the characters are, early on it's signposted who likes who and how they're going to go kind of thing. But I think that the way you get there and the way, and it's less really to do with how they interact with each other and how they interact with society and how that affects the way they interact with each other, which I think is the real magic in there. I don't think it's a love story you've never seen before, but I
Mm.
but I do think that it is right for the story it's in, and it is enmeshed in this sort of like, exploration of the society that they're that's represented, right? And the ways that relates to our society. And I think it definitely is way cleverer than a show that just has people exploding each other's heads in slow motion. you know um yeah. So for our other nominee, Jonas, Severance, we both talked about it quite excitedly on the podcast when we initially talked about it. Do you like, how do you feel about it?
Uh, man, how do I start how I feel about Severance? Yeah, Severance, absolutely. I spent all of 2022 having Severance recommended to me, and then I kept putting it off. I kept going, yeah, it's over there, it's fine. It's not on a platform that I can just click a button and watch it on easily. And everyone's tiptoeing around what the show is, because I think that part of what makes this show good is not really not knowing, not having not having expectations, if that makes sense. Like, not having certain themes and kind of core plot ideas already in your head, because otherwise you have a pre-established idea of what the show's going to be, and the less you are prepared for, I think the better it is. Yeah. And then, hearing you were going to review it in December, I was like, oh, well, people have been talking about this, telling me to watch this show, and I should watch it before you tell me everything that's good about it. And just, holy shit, what a dumb idiot I was to not to put this show off for so long, and to not absolutely dive into this show at its own point of conception, when a lot of other people would have been able, when that buzz was happening, and when that kind of societal, there was a chance to maybe be part of a community who were all watching us for the first time. But boy, am I glad that you and I are basically that community that I would have wanted, where you and I got to talk about this show as it was relevant to each other. And I'm glad that we get to use this podcast to just keep coming back to it, because holy shit, it's incredible. It is an incredible show. It manages it's one of those shows that I think does so much with so little, right? Like, there aren't crazy amounts of set, there isn't crazy CG to help you visualize something that another show couldn't possibly do, like in House of Dragon, or that Lord of the Rings show, Rings of Power. There's a few actors who all do an incredible job of pretty much all of them playing two characters, and there's a few sets, and where the sets are used and what they get and what information you get out of those locations is absolutely vital in helping you to piece together this strange mystery, this puzzle, this environment, this who made the decisions for this place to be like this. Like that there are so many questions looming in your mind as you watch this show that you just really want explanations for. But it's not necessarily going to be Severance's job to answer all of those questions. And there's just something incredibly captivating about watching characters navigate those same spaces, asking the same or different questions about the environment, about other characters, about the world that they live in. And you're there with them the whole time as they kind of muddle through this. And yeah, it's just pacing great, acting great, like sound design as well. Just like that fucking opening is just so good as well. Their little intro sequence. And yeah, like, I just
This show had like so many moments that were like, right up there with some of the greatest like TV twist moments I've ever had. Red Wedding, Bernard not seeing the door in Westworld, like, moments where it recontextualizes the whole show for you in a moments where you didn't even know you didn't know that, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, that suddenly opens up so much more, and you feel both like you don't feel stupid, you feel excited, because it doesn't feel like they just suddenly like stuck something in there to screw with you. It was there all along, you just didn't see it. That's one of the most satisfying shows in TV. And yet, everyone is also playing just absolute blinders in just the small moments in the dramas. Like it's set in sort of a proxy for the real world, but also there's just constant world building in like really satisfying ways, like learning about like the weird inner workings of this company, but also maybe the outside world's not that normal either.
Mm.
And like it just it's full of like you know pitch black satire of capitalism, but also its own built world that feels consistent and enticing to explore. Yeah, it's
And I
so
think
good.
and it does such a good job of kind of exploring like a psychological kind of quandary, which is just like, hey, Jamie, if you, with no context, had your boss walk up to you in the office and say, "You've done great work today. Here's a pencil." You've got no context that this pencil could be mundane. And so the only other possibility is that this is incredible. This is the greatest thing you've ever received. You've never received a pencil before. And you lose your shit about it. Like you're bragging about that pencil for weeks to come. Everyone else in the office, where's their pencil? And for Severance to kind of present this idea of like this capitalist kind of hellscape of the idea that like reward without context, rewards can just be, I don't know, just like completely stripped of any real value, and instead the value is dictated to you upon delivery,
Well,
is
just
kind of horrifying.
like take it like the sort of satire of just taking all of the normal corporate bullshit that people do out of context, right?
Yeah.
Weird reward systems, like really being up their own arse about the story of the company, or like like
The employee
the
handbook.
employee handbook, right? Imagine taking all of these things and giving it to someone who doesn't know anything else. Like they start their life with that. That's like it's both so relatable and so like enticingly alien at the same time in just a really really satisfying way, and it's just a joy spending time learning about this horrifying world.
Yeah. What like it's not a negative, but I have a complaint. It's not a negative though. How dare they end season 1 like that? How
Mm.
dare they? How dare they make me feel so desperately hungry for more and yet communicate to me that this is the end? That was just rude and yet spectacular.
You know what's so great about the ending is it wasn't like we had a few fallow episodes and then they left it on a cliffhanger. It was great right up until that point. And you were like, this is great, this is great. I'm really loving show. This is great, this is great. It ended.
Yep.
And to be able
No,
to do that, to be able to not dip and then end on a cliffhanger like that.
no deceleration. Never takes its like foot off the pedal and then just cuts to black.
And you just go,
And
leave them wanting more.
yeah.
Oh my fucking god, yes.
Yeah.
So
Uh
we've got to pick a winner out of these two, Severance and Cyberpunk Edge Runners. I really liked Cyberpunk Edge Runners. I think it was a really really good choice, and I think in other years it might be the winner for me. But Severance might be one of the best TV shows I've ever seen. What's your thinking?
Well, I just, I was prepared. I was prepared to try and talk you down from Cyberpunk Edge Runners. I prepared like a 20 bullet point kind of like psychological minefield that I could take you through to try and to convince you that Severance might be the show that you really do want to vote as your not your actual kind of take home winner for the TV show of the Bunyip Awards 2022. But it sounds like I don't have to do that.
No, I think it might be Severance, guys.
I think about yeah, I loved Severance. I can't disagree that I think Severance was just all in all kind of a perfect storm, just a perfect package of television. Full stop. I really do want to press that I think Cyberpunk Edge Runners does something really special, especially when you take into account that it doesn't exist in isolation. Like existing in isolation, it is a great show, but when you consider that it kind of exists in this really quite murky existence of being associated with a video game and Keanu Reeves and a tabletop RPG system, and there's a lot to talk about in terms of what this anime production team have done in the past, and that they are really quite that they are specialists in what they do, and for them to deliver just a standout, incredible like Netflix original anime, there's a lot there that is really worth celebrating and really worth loving. But Severance was absolutely television show of the year for me.
Great. So Severance takes it then. Um, Congratulations, Severance. You are television show of the year for the Bunyip Awards 2022. But
Congratulations,
before we
Severance.
move on to the games, we have to decide if it's better than our current reigning champion. So
Yes.
our current reigning champion is Ted Lasso, the absolutely fucking stellar sitcom that came out a couple of years ago, and it's just about to go into its season 3. I saw some of the hype that they were doing for it, and I was like, oh, I forgot how excited I am for Ted Lasso season 3. I'm so excited to see the boys again. This is like Sophie's choice right here, because Ted Lasso might be my favorite sitcom, and Severance might be my favorite drama.
Sure. Okay, so I guess like let's pretend for a moment that I like kind of was either neutral or liked football, right? And then I liked Ted Lasso. Well, I'd be tempted to say at this point, yeah, Ted Lasso's good, but it's not going to work for people that don't like football. So, Severance wins. But I don't like football.
Neither of us do.
I fucking revile football hooligan. Like I hate football culture. I really do. I really am quite vocal about how I just think it's a awful world to be in. And yet football is life. Like Ted Lasso absolutely is a great show. Yeah.
And the core of Ted Lasso is refuting that sort of relationship with football, right? Being like, no, it's about positivity. It's about, the world's better when we come together in sport, kind of thing.
It's just Ted Lasso as a character is obviously, he's a sports coach, and and the whole show is about, uniting and bringing up a sports team that people expect so much of, and yet, and the idea is that kind of from episode 1 they're really not delivering on that. And a lot of other, there's a lot of opportunity there kind of just to make like a show like by football fans for football fans, with the kind of, just this kind of like, yeah, people who like football are like this show, so what? But holy shit, it's just filled with like so much like empathic masculinity, if that makes sense. Like masculinity that is,
masculinity.
yeah, it's like it's emotional and it's collaborative and it's wholesome and it's loving. That said, though, no ending of a Ted Lasso episode made me feel like Severance made me feel, like genuine spiked drama and
I don't know, the last episode of the second season, what happens with Nate? Oh, that was peak drama right there.
I don't know, something about Nate just made me kind of go like, I sort of was kind of like, oh, he's going down his villain arc. Oh, there he goes down the villain arc. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I don't know.
fair enough.
I do think Nate was a slow burn.
Should we go with Severance then? Because Severance is a show that feels like it started off great and is only going to get better. And Ted Lasso was as good as itself both seasons, and I again, yeah, I don't think I felt the way in Ted Lasso as I did in Severance. I'm not sure Ted Lasso could make me feel that way. I'm not sure it is that kind of show, but Severance just made me like, it made me excited. It made me excited to watch another episode every time I came back to it. I would watch the whole season in a day if I could have done.
And I think there's something kind of incredible about Severance, which is just like, man, Severance can do so much. Like it has such a length of potential about what actual events can take place in its world. Where Ted Lasso, absolutely, this isn't a mark against it, but you know, we know in Ted Lasso that it's like no one's gonna get like decapitated. No one like it's a safe. It is a really good, feel good, wholesome, incredible show that does have like stakes in its personal like relationships and emotions and things. But we know that Ted
world of
Lasso's
Severance is just more. You know, it's more. There's more possibility space there.
absolutely, yeah, and I cannot wait for the next episode of Severance. Whereas the next episode of Ted Lasso, while I'm looking forward to the season, the next episode of Ted Lasso does not have nearly as much riding on it for me.
Yep, fair enough. All right, well, Severance is now our reigning champion of TV then.
Yeah.
We've actually swapped every year so far for reigning champion of TV.
It's like we're a case study that television is getting better. Like it just is.
Yeah, or there's recency bias.
All that.
or we just remember the thing we watched last better. All right, we're going to take a brief break, but when we come back, we'll talk about the best game of the year. the very best game that we've played.
Best game. And don't even ask about those other games that we didn't play because
they're not good.
Exactly.
They're shit. All right, we'll be back in a moment, everybody. See you in a bit.
Right. Are we ready? No,
Maybe
apparently not.
Yeah.
Oh, no! Piss!
Oh, brightness up does brightness down. Oh, I'm holding it upside down, that's why.
If you've eaten an apple just before you drink piss, then it's still good. It's still good. You know it's good piss. Yeah.
The cars will be coming shortly. Get out of the road.
Oh. Oh, no. I forgot that. How do you know the key for that?
Okay. There you go. Sorry, Stu. That's not immediately chosen.
I'm someone who's very focused around comfort, and leather does not look.
Oh God, I'm glad for the second half.
I am horny for rice pudding. Hashtag all boobs matter. So this is launch rocket. Oh! Oh my God, we're gonna die again! I've never been sucked so many times in one session. You don't have to be gay to examine the hit points of a nutsack. We're going to take a brief break to fix this. Hammering away at those rocks.
Oh, hey laddie, I'm Scotland.
You see someone wearing that little purple logo and you know there's pussy about. Tom's souffle has collapsed and so he's shanked David in a fit of rage. My YouTube apology will be up tomorrow.
Fully monetized, 46 minutes. 18 ad breaks.
We got to make some money somehow. I will not let you through. Detain. We fucking got it. Gulag! You done fucked up, my friend. Gonna get gulag and death thanks to me. No, just get permit. It's fine. Detain. Off to gulag. Now that man is going to gulag. Aha. Wrong. What do you have to say for yourself, you son of a bitch? Detain. To the gulag with you! Got any bombs? Well, that looks like a weapon to me. You have made a mistake coming in here. Is it so obvious? Yes. To the gulag, my friend. They don't look the same. Detain! Female? Female? Interrogate! Are you a woman? Please let me through. In the gulag! I have family to not feed. To the gulags with you! You're wasting my time. Aha. Wrong.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. And it's the Bunyip Review Awards, and we are. Do you want to do some clicks, and then I'll get probably going?
Is it still the Bunyip Review Awards?
Yeah, it is. It's not changed. All right, welcome back. Welcome back to the Bunyip Review Awards, and we're moving on to our second category of the year. And this year, our category second is. So I'm really mangling this, aren't I? Games.
Push through. I believe in you.
The second category is games. We're talking about some games. We've had some good games this year. We've had some mediocre games this year. But we've got some nominees. The eligible games this year are, on my side, I reviewed Horizon Zero Dawn, Dishonored 2, Strange Horticulture, Crusader Kings 3, The Witness, Sprawlopolis, Winterhaven Woods and Love Letter, Phoenix Point, Stray, Plate Up, Overwatch 2, Skyrim and Pentiment. And Jonas?
I thought you were going to keep saying words. I'm.
You can see the words in front of you. You know what I'm going to say.
I thought you were like, and Jonas, you reviewed, and then I was going to
see.
It's fine. We're not cutting this out. I reviewed Inside, Neo 2, The Last of Us 2, Elden Ring, Teardown, Citizen Sleeper, Neon White, Hollow Knight, Cult of the Lamb, Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origins, Immortality, and God of War Ragnarok.
But they can't all be winners, and we have some nominees. We've each chosen a nominee, and this year our nominees are, I've chosen Plate Up, and Jonas has chosen Hollow Knight. So Jonas, tell us why you picked Hollow Knight as your nominee for the year.
Yeah, this was tough. This was really tough for me to pick a game. In my list, I've got The Last of Us 2, The Last of Us as a series, I guess, a duo of games. The Last of Us kind of represents the complete upper echelon of AAA prestige games in terms of cinematic delivery and mood and that kind of perfectly directed and delivered kind of balance between action, story, narrative, puzzle. There's a bit of crafting. There's a bit of optional kind of exploration-y side quest in there. It's just such an all-round package of a game. And then the next month there was Elden Ring, and Elden Ring was possibly going to be would be the other game of the year that I would nominate. But what held me back was Elden Ring has so much scope, so much content, so much variety to its incredibly vast and impressive world and combat and character building system, that not all of it lands, and at times it can be harder to appreciate that game in its kind of smaller moments. Whereas my nominee, Hollow Knight, I think delivers just a near perfect experience in everything it does. There's not a single area of its map that wasn't kind of perfectly designed with a kind of a fine brushstroke of perfection and detail. There isn't a single aspect of its combat or enemy design or the ability to customize your own character that isn't intended, if that makes sense. Every single little bit of that game, I think, has been perfectly tweaked to deliver a just kind of like a perfect package of design and narrative and visuals and experience and music and everything about Hollow Knight. I think is just wonderful. I played Hollow Knight for the first time sort of, it was quite a few years ago. I'm gonna say maybe 2018, 2019, and it blew me away. It was one of the first games of like the Metroidvania genre that I'd ever played, and I kind of spoiled myself in that sense because I kind of ended up playing the best Metroidvania before any other Metroidvania sort of available on the market. I'd never played a game that sort of had this kind of this open world environment where there was this idea that you kind of you start off with a world that you can't fully explore, and your inability to fully explore the world is limited by the fact that you require you have to defeat certain bosses or get certain upgrades or get certain powers. And while that is quite like also Zelda is quite sort of parallel in those regards, Metroidvanias are sort of almost described as corner scratchers because there isn't a single part of the map that sort of isn't important in your development. And where Hollow Knight kind of just really impresses is as you peel away at the layers of the map, as you discover each new biome, each new corner, each new interaction between your abilities and the world around you, it just fully kind of fleshes out this really beautiful experience as you appreciate precisely how you interact with the world as a player, how your character navigates this world through nothing but small, sprightly but finely tuned little jumps and little strikes of his tiny little nail that at the beginning of the game just feels, it feels weak, it feels quite like ineffectual, but by the end of the game you've got your double jumps, you've got your wall grabs, you've got your dashes, you've got your ability to smash down through the ground, and you become so familiar with these landscapes that you start to navigate it with this air of confidence and familiarity as you've overcome this world and you've overcome so many of its challenges, and all that's left is to peel back the mystery at what this world, what is this kind of Hollow's Nest, Deep Nest, this underground world of dead insects and this dead culture. What is it all about, and why is there kind of a mystery to explore there? It just works for me in so many ways. And when I played it again this year, I just remembered, damn, this is an incredible game. This is a near perfect experience, I think, from start to finish. And there's not a single element of this game that I don't think was like just so perfectly planned and delivered to have the most impact possible to the player without spoiling, without overshadowing, without kind of trying to stand out amongst its peers. And knowing that, I know that then you played it not long after I reviewed it. You started playing it, and that really sort of convinced me that this was a game that was worth bringing to the awards show and giving it the chance to shine, basically. Um, yeah. Do you want to talk? Well, Jamie, I see that you've basically nominated a game.
I have
Plate Up.
basically nominated a game.
You've
Yeah.
basically nominated a game called Plate Up. Do you want to tell me a little bit about why you nominated Plate Up, please?
Yeah, so I picked Plate Up. So I also had a few pretty good games out there. I had Horizon Zero Dawn, which we both really enjoyed. We had Dishonored 2, which is one of the best immersive sims that has been made. Crusader Kings 3, which I've played shitloads of and absolutely loved it. The Witness, which is one of my favorite ever puzzle games. And Stray, which sort of came out of nowhere and suddenly was just a really great short experience. Skyrim, one of the greatest games ever made, and Pentiment, which had it probably come out early in the year, might have had a really good shot at this. But the reason I chose Plate Up is because the other games they were good and I really enjoyed them, but Plate Up has given me something different and something that has affected me and a lot of my friends quite intensively. It's always going to be hard for a game that's significantly better multiplayer and mostly a party game to sort of rise up in this sort of awards idea, right? Like, they're not usually award baity games or award getting games. But the thing about PlayTup is that, since it came out, since we started playing it, me and a group of friends of ours have played it just constantly. We've kept coming back to it whenever there's time that all of us have free and we're not sort of, doing a specific thing like streaming or something. Someone says, "Do you want to play some PlayTup?" And we go back and we play some PlayTup. And we spend hours running kitchens and designing kitchens. We're at the point now where certain ones of us who have played it the most have just things we do automatically. We almost talk telepathically because we know how the earlier stages of the game go. Like, this game isn't doing anything that's like particularly, like, I've never seen this before, but what it is doing is it's creating a feeling amongst a group of friends that is just so satisfying. This game is, it has a very simple premise that it executes on really well. It has a low barrier to entry. Like, anyone can come in and just start having fun with it. But it has an intense scope to it. The roguelike element makes it feel like you can always do better. The fact that they keep adding content, and that promise to keep adding content, they're following through on. Every few months there's a new update that adds new meals, that adds new ways to play the game. Every time they add new content into the game, it's something that you didn't expect that improves the game. I don't think they've had a bad update since the game released so far. It has, excellent Twitch integration. It has, they allowed Steam Workshop mods, and the two most popular Steam Workshop mods are a kitchen designer, so that you can play the game you want to play, and more multiplayer, so you can bring more people to play the game. People fucking love this game, and it's just all good. And what's even more incredible is it's like a first-time developer who just came out of nowhere and made this incredible party game that's so malleable, that's so enjoyable, that's been continually bringing us together. I know that like, if people saw this list and they were picking it purely from like the idea of like, what you'd expect, Polygon or PC Gamer or whatever to give their awards, it might go to Stray or it might go to Horizon Zero Dawn. But I think that PlayTup is genuinely different and genuinely interesting. And if there was a game on this list that the majority of people asked me, not necessarily intense gamers, but the majority of just people asked me, what would you recommend I play, preferably with friends, I'd probably put PlayTup on. I'd probably put PlayTup pretty high, if not the highest on that list. Everyone I've brought to PlayTup has found something in it, has enjoyed doing something with it, and it's created those moments in gaming which I treasure the most, which are the moments where you feel like you've done something only you have done. Like setting up a kitchen where we trapped Jonas between some tables and he just like served in a circle, or like working out the systems for like auto cooking pies through shacks on the side of the map, or like designing stupid decorations. We had we set up a kitchen where we had extremely long tables and we slid plates down the tables. Like, your gameplay experiences feel like yours, and I think that's a really special thing about this game. Jonas, you played a bit of PlayTup with me to so that you knew what was going on with this game. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think PlayTup offers something quite, really quite. I guess it offers something that I really appreciate about like roguelike games, right? Which is PlayTup isn't like a game where they've designed every level and every narrative and every voice line and every like point has been sort of pre-selected by a team of writers and designers and things like that. PlayTup is instead sort of it is a platform, it is a framework for which you can then generate challenges and fun and sort of content. It is a platform from which there are a bunch of rules that they have pre-written And there are a bunch of items or tools at your disposal as a player that you are allowed to make use of. And there's you gain coins and you spend those coins on those tools. But there is no right or wrong answer in terms of how you develop that kitchen and how you serve those customers and how you reach success. And success is kind of by your own measure as well. Yes, there is a fail in that game. There is a fail in the sense of someone doesn't get served, or a restaurant, someone doesn't get their food. The restaurant has failed. But the game then doesn't really do much else to kind of qualify what success is. Success is completely made up by your enjoyment and what do you think is successful. And you're obviously allowed to brand your restaurant in such a way that success is kind of minorly defined by the mechanics. Like affordable means people come and go faster, so more money and things like that, whereas fine dining means that you get the time to kind of spend more time on meals, and you get to kind of become a bit more of a perfectionist with the things that you're making, which means success for you could be crafting a complex menu of hard to make meals, but every single meal is always delivered to the customer's satisfaction and on time. Or there's my kind of restaurant where we do fucking hot dogs. We only do hot dogs, and we only do hot dogs with ketchup, and I'm gonna deliver all the ketchup as fast as I possibly can at a frenetic rate of like breakneck 5 floppy, faceless 3D human men running in, sitting down, and I'm trying to serve them hot dog and ketchup as fast as the game's programming will literally allow me. And that's fucking incredible, right? That we can get so many different positive outcomes from that framework. That's really fun. That just is fun, right? Especially when Overcooked has already, it feels like Overcooked kind of cornered the market on that. Like, how could you possibly get a fun party-based, cooking kitchen-based game that relies heavily on the successful delivery of meals to customers in a 3D environment where the environment is almost just as important as the recipe or the mechanics? Go on.
Well, I think the Overcooked is an interesting comparison, because you were saying about, like, part of it is you creating your own like win state, right? Like, you can go on for as long as you can survive, but you do kind of create what you decide is winning. And I think that Overcooked, I loved Overcooked, I really enjoyed it, but Overcooked was the game setting you a puzzle and you working at it till you'd mastered that puzzle, and then you move on to the next puzzle. And I think the great thing about PlayTub is that you spend the first few days in the game not knowing what the puzzle is. And then by the consequences of your action, by the consequences of the first few cards, the puzzle starts to reveal itself, partially by the randomness of the map that you're in, and partially by your own actions. Eventually you realize, oh fuck, we don't have enough tables to do this properly, and then you have to come up with a way of solving the puzzle of how do we solve the table problem. And that's a problem because you didn't buy enough tables. It's not because the game didn't give you enough tables. It's because you didn't buy enough, because you bought that sink or you bought that counter or that stack of plates. And it's that feeling when you're doing really well, where you feel like, I did this. We did this, right? We have a unique kitchen that we made. We set this puzzle up and we're fucking smashing it, which is so satisfying. And the pace as well, like you say about this, serving as quick as the game will allow. Like, the game encourages speed, encourages pace, which means that you have this really intense sort of sway of the preparation phase where everyone's thinking and talking, and then a solid 2 minutes of silence, or just pickles, burger,
Yep.
hot dog, ketchup, and
Functional keywords. There is no
sweaty
conversation.
hands, like rubbing against the controller. The controller's like crumbling under your fingers as you're holding it so tight. And then the day ends and everyone goes, and then there's a brief
Do it all again.
pause. How do we make that better? How do we improve on that?
Yeah.
It's such a satisfying loop.
No, it was a lot of fun, and I really, it's, admittedly, I would not buy and play PlayTub on my own, on my own kind of volition, right? Like, it took your passion, it took you inviting me to a game, and it took, you know, your passion to talk about it here on the podcast to kind of make me appreciate why I would enjoy it.
I think it
And I
needs
did.
evangelists. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it doesn't look like anything before you've played it.
Hmm. And yeah, it definitely, you know, I came away really enjoying that experience. And I think if I was organizing, like, if I was trying to organize my own group, 4 of us, let's play a game together and hang out, or what could we play? Playtop is now very much high up on that list of games that I would recommend to play alongside people, to play to kind of like fill a space of entertainment and know that there is going to be a consistently kind of high quality of engagement and joy kind of had out of it. I did play the game solo for a little bit. You know, I ran my own restaurant for a bit. It was fine. I think it really does require that element where you need to. I think it is elevated by the communication. It's elevated by the Twitch integration. It's elevated by the mods. But again, I think that's the kind of joyful thing about it being just like a really strong framework or platform. Just as you've really leveled up your Skyrim experience using community-made mods and things like that, PlateUp is a platform that can be elevated so much and so diversely and in so many different directions.
I think really what it benefits from is you not having control over everything. And I think that, you know, just 2 players alone already makes the game, makes it feel like you're having a balancing act between the two of you, the person in the kitchen having to make sure that they keep up with the person in the dining room. And I think there is a very specific tone to the single player game, which is one of optimization and later on automation, but it's not the tone that I think is the best out of the game. And I think the game is absolutely at its best when it's multiple people trying to balance their part of the game and having to interact with each other. And you know, it is inherently, I think, a social experience.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So Hollow Knight, your nominee that's going up against it. I played it. I'm not a massive Metroidvania fan. I think I've played little bits in the past, but this is the first one I've truly properly played through the whole way through. And actually, I had started playing it. I started playing it just after you reviewed it, but then finished it for this to make sure that I had a sort of full rounded view of it. And I think it's great. I think it was, you know, even before you nominated it, it was probably one of my favorite on your list. And I think that, you know, it has the problems that all Metroidvanias have. It is hard to go back to if you haven't played for a while. You can sometimes like forget, you know, what's on one side of the map or whatever, or where important things are, but it mitigates those things as much as possible. And I think the biggest mitigation from for either of those problems, and I think those are the core problems in Metroidvanias, is just how memorable everything is. Like, you know, every environment is super distinct. Every location really has, like, you know, not just in its theming, although the theming is incredible, but in the makeup of the levels. Like, the way that you have to navigate levels feels different depending on where you are in the map. And so you really remember places. There's areas in the map where there's like all of these vertical conveyor belts, and then there's areas in the map where there's, like, you know, tunnels with like big worms going backwards and forwards. There's, you know, or there's like areas that are just full of like big bursting balls of pus, or areas with, like, you know, floating jellyfish and things like that. And they're all so distinct, not just in how they look, but how you navigate them and how you interact with those things. So when you go to a place, you just go, oh yeah, I'm here, and oh yeah, that's over there. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I think that the tone the world strikes is really interesting. I think that, you know, combat was good, but the boss fights were great. Like, every boss fight felt like it was the right balance of interesting and diverse without being like punishingly hard. There's definitely ones that felt like they were, you know, impossibly difficult at the point where I met them, but then I would go away. I would do the Metroidvania thing of finding an upgrade to a sword, or finding a new charm or something, and I'd come back and I'd beat them, and that would be a satisfying experience. You know, probably the weakest boss of the whole lot is the last boss, and it's still pretty good. And I think that it was a satisfying experience no matter where you went, and everything you came across was an exciting find.
Mm.
Or when you went back to a place and it was different, that was really interesting and really enjoyable. Yeah, I loved it from start to finish. I think that I took a break in the middle because other things came out and I started playing other things, but I went back to it 2 or 3 times before I actually finished it, and every time I went back to it, I just had that moment of, oh yeah, I really like this game. And I didn't get the full super duper final ending where you've done like all of the extra stuff and you get the super duper final ending. I got the absolute base ending, but I as soon as I got that base ending, and then I saw on the wiki that there was more endings, I was like, I'm probably going to come back to this. I'm probably going to come back and I'm going to find those things. Maybe not right now, but it's definitely something I'd be willing to do, because it's just enjoyable being in that world, I think, and playing that game. And I'd probably come back for the sequel, I think, if it's more of the same kind of thing.
Man, God, I could speak at length on how much faith I have in Team Cherry to deliver just another absolute, like, top tier kind of Metroidvania experience when they deliver Silk Song, which was meant to be just yet another free update that they did. Because you were talking about how PlayTop has been so well supported by its devs and how they've kept delivering like content and done it for free. Hollow Knight absolutely got that experience on its kind of relevant release, right? Like, Hollow Knight now has 3 quite noticeable and impactful expansions to it that are all just part of the base game. You don't buy them, you don't install them as separate things. It's just Hollow Knight came out, and then a few months later, they added in a bunch of new bosses, a whole new upgrade feature, and a whole new form of getting like health, or a whole new charm that had its own little side quest associated with it. And that update got its own name, its own kind of marketing, but it was just a free update that came with the game, and now it's just an all-in-one package. And while there are lots of visual motifs throughout the game where you're like, oh, this looks a little bit different than everything else I've touched in the game so far, they introduce those things kind of like as little trickles throughout your experience. So if you play the game now, you don't get to the boss and then suddenly a door just opens and there's 3 updates worth of content. Actually, you've been playing the whole game with those updates influencing your gameplay just a little bit here and there. Just finding a room tucked away that has like a secret little charm in it, bumping into an NPC who just has something to say that kind of points you towards this idea that there's a quest or a story to follow. And man, we've not talked about them, but the NPCs, like the story in this game, the way it's so kind of like just quietly told through people just living their lives in this environment is so lovely.
You're saying about the additional content stuff. You're absolutely right that it's just melded into the game. I couldn't help but think about how, at points I had to look up the wiki for something specific. Not because the game was failing to give me stuff, but because it encourages exploration, but because I personally wanted to find something. And it would say like, oh, this is part of this update and this is part of that update. And I wouldn't have even noticed. Like they felt like they were just things that I encountered. As someone who has spent a lot of time modding Bethesda games, every Bethesda game has a mod early on that spreads the expansion pack content through the game, because usually what happens is you boot the game and you get 30 emails saying here's all the expansion content. It doesn't feel like it's been expanded. It feels like it's the perfect version of the game. There's an expansion that involves this circus, which you can just miss. Like, you have to go out of your way to find it. They put a whole expansion in the game that no one comes up to you and is like, oh, by the way, you've downloaded the circus expansion. it's just there. You just have to come across it by accident at some point. It's even kind of hard to find without
Yeah.
actively searching for it. And I think that's
You're
really
ab-
interesting. They're so confident in the way that their content is that they don't even need to tell you it's there. You'll want to find it because you'll
I
know
mean,
it's good.
there's something about exploring Hollowness that, like, you know, a frustrating Metroidvania would encourage you to get to the end as fast as possible, so that you can be done with the challenges, so that you can avoid dangers to your life, and so that you generally, like, if you find a room and that room has a really cool item in it, you'll take the cool item and leave because you dare not risk, like, exposing yourself to inconvenience or challenges that would otherwise slow you down. But in Hollow Knight, every little nook, cranny, glisten, noise, like a moving shadow at the edge of your screen, the fact that you can hear the murmuring of an NPC behind a wall that you can't figure out how to get through, makes you kind of so elated with this idea that you're like, what is that? Where is it? How do I get to it? I want to get to it. Nothing is far away. Nothing is an inconvenience for you to do or get to, or navigate in that game, because it's just so tactile. Your jumps are so perfectly, like, you have like the perfect weight and the perfect kind of driftness to your attacks. When you swing the nail and bounce off your enemies just a little bit, you start to incorporate that into your combat, and eventually learn that you can jump and swipe your nail downwards to bounce off enemies, and that becomes not just a part of combat, but a part of, like, actual map, like, exploration and navigation. And it's just those, like, those few little pixels of, like, the way you move left, the way you move right, the height, the bounce, the every little interaction between your little man with his nail and this absolute kind of Goliath of a world, that that it's not just like caves and plants and creatures, but, like, you get to this city and it's raining and it's sad and there are statues and there are homes and there are buildings and there's society. There's kind of reverence to Hollow Nest and what it's been hiding from you all this time, that you kind of you just can't help but, like, kind of fall in love with. And I think genuinely just take away with you, like, once you're done, like, that there's not a single bit of Hollow Nest that I think I won't recognize, at least for the next 10 years. You could show me a snippet of that game. You could show me any part of its art design or its UI, and it would be memorable and influential to the point that I would reminisce positively about any aspect of that game. And I love it for that so much.
All right, we've got to pick a winner. And as much as I love PlayTub, I really, I wanted it to get its due because I think it's well worth the recognition. I think everyone should play it. It's just a really great fun time. But Hollow Knight is obviously a better game, and I think that Hollow Knight is a complete experience that will be, people know Hollow Knight, people talk about Hollow Knight still, even this much time after it. And I think that it is absolutely worthwhile of the best game we reviewed this year.
Hollow Knight, for me, it feels timeless. I think it, again, it is a perfect game. Like, never mind its genre, never mind the fact that it will challenge you. It will be hard, and that will genuinely put people off. This is the kind of thing where, if someone said to me, Jonas, I want to kind of get into gaming, what's something I can just pick up and play? Like, I want to play a game that really just will just show me what it's all about. Why are games good? Man, Hollow Knight would just be one of the first things I recommend to that person, especially for its pick up and playness of it, right? Like, it's small, it's indie, it's 2D draw, like, it's 2D hand drawings. It feels accessible to anyone, whether or not the challenge is then, force you to put it down. I think is up to you as a player, and then up to your ability to kind of, keep pushing past and navigate that world out of your own curiosity. But man, as a starting point, yeah, I think Hollow Knight's kind of really just perfect.
Okay, so Hollow Knight takes it, but here's the real question. Is Hollow Knight better than our current reigning champion game, Disco Elysium? Disco Elysium that we reviewed in 2020. It was the very grimdark, well, actually not even grimdark, just sort of nihilistic RPG game about a strung out cop trying to solve a murder in a dockside town. I'm going to put it out there. I still think Disco Elysium is one of the best games I've ever played. Disco Elysium was, I'm a massive fan of RPGs, and Disco Elysium was such a singular experience. It was so, I still think about it now. I still see images from Disco Elysium on Twitter, or people quote it. I still see people arguing about whether it was too left wing or too right wing on Reddit. I still see people talking about this game constantly, and it was just so good. And then they came out with a fully voiced version with a whole new suite of content, which I haven't managed to have a go at yet. I really liked Hollow Knight, but I think Disco Elysium was like a game changer, and I still think it's a game changer even this far on.
Little anecdote for you. This Christmas, I received Hollow Knight merch and Disco Elysium merch.
And you threw one of them away, but which one did you throw?
I will have to burn the one that doesn't get selected. No, in terms of so if we were talking, I want to talk a bit about just gameplay, right? I think Hollow Knight gameplay is better than Disco Elysium gameplay. I think picking up a controller and pressing buttons on Hollow Knight is better, right, than it is with Disco Elysium. But I guess where Disco Elysium outshines Hollow Knight is in one, as you put it, the uniqueness. I think Hollow Knight belongs to a bastion of Metroidvania games, and Metroidvania games are much for likeness in terms of the gameplay loop they send you through. Where Hollow Knight is unique is kind of in one, how those dials are tweaked just right, and in its 2D art and in its world and in its music. But then Disco Elysium manages to do not just that with the world and music, but presents this absolute template of a character that you get to develop through the stats you give him and the dialogue choices that you make that allow for conversations that no other game will ever replicate. The fact that I recently had a conversation with one of our friends about whether or not he died saying the word cock carousel is not a conversation I can have about any Metroidvania. And when many of my other friends have said, no, Jonas, my character never said the words cock carousel, what are you, crazy? I then had to go on a 20-minute long mad rant about the exact nature of my gameplay that led me to that moment. And yet I know so many people who never even glimpsed the exact path of dialogue options, decision makings, and kind of risks that I took. And yet they all had a story of an equal caliber to tell me about their gameplay.
You know what it is? It's that, so many RPGs, they try and do, character created character, but a player led character development by having a total blank slate. Like Fallout or, Skyrim or whatever, the character says nothing, and it's just like, I agree or I don't agree, or where are the goblins kind of thing. And, Disco Elysium takes the complete opposite tact of being intensely characterful. Like everything you say is, thoroughly written, thoroughly characterful, but thoroughly different as well. The main character feels like he by the end of the game you'll feel like you've had a thoroughly fully created characterized person you've played, but it'll also be your unique thoroughly characterized person. And that is such a magic trick. That is such a magic trick that you can come away from that, from an RPG where you can have so many different routes and feel like you had a unique and yet interesting character. Not just interesting experience, interesting character. That's mad. That's so good. And I think that just is something that I have yet to have another game, pull a magic trick on me like that. Hollow Knight is great. Hollow Knight is brilliant. It does what it does really well. But I didn't come out of Hollow Knight being like, that's a game changer. That's going to change the way I think about games. And Disco Elysium does do that to me.
Yeah. All right. I think Disco Elysium remains ultimate champion of games on the Bunyip Awards.
All right. It stays crowned champion of games. But you never know. 2023 might be the year to dethrone it. All right, we're going to move on to movies, and our possible eligible movies for this year are. There was a fair few good ones up here. I reviewed Don't Look Up, Licorice Pizza, Big Bug, Death on the Nile, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, The Eternals, Thor: Love and Thunder, The Father, Bullet Train, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, The Banshees of Inisherin, and Glass Onion. So I think it's actually about half crap. And Jonas, what did you review?
Yeah, I reviewed Prisoners of the Ghostland, Nightmare Alley, The Batman, Boiling Point, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, RRR, Rise, Roar, Revolt. It has quite a few different titles, unfortunately. House of Gucci, Nobody, Nope, Mortal Kombat, the 2021 version, Halloween, and The Menu.
All right, and on our official nominees, the movies that we will be talking about right now, our chosen films for this year are The Banshees of Inisherin and Everything Everywhere All at Once. And yeah, I'll talk a bit about Banshees of Inisherin and why I chose that for my choice. There were some really great films this year. But I would be, it would be a problem if I didn't mention how shit some of the films were this year as well. Big Bug was fucking awful. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was an absolute travesty. The Eternals was one of the most boring Marvel movies I've seen, and Thor: Love and Thunder was like a university improv group that really didn't have it together. But there was also some really good films. There was, surprisingly good films like Bullet Train. There was like indie darlings that came out like incredible, like Licorice Pizza. I reviewed an absolute classic, one of my favorite films, The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. But the film that really surprised me the most, and I think the film that I'm gonna continue to think about for years to come, was The Banshees of Inisherin. After I reviewed that, I also reviewed Martin McDonough's earlier film, Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. And I kind of wish I'd seen them the other way around, because Banshees of Inisherin feels like a distillation of the ideas and themes that he is known for and that he is really good at crafting. The Banshees of Inisherin is a really beautiful film. It is quiet and atmospheric and yet funny and explosively dramatic all at once, and that's like a mess of contradictions which feels like it shouldn't be able to be put together, and yet it absolutely is. It is a film that I came out of the cinema and I turned to the people who I watched it with, and we all went, that film was really funny, god, it was depressing. And that's a really, maybe not every film that has that reaction that's a positive, but for this film it really is. It captures the nuance and the subtleties of conflict in communities that at once are bound by a sort of lifelong love and yet are torn apart by totally reasonable and yet utterly absurd conflicts. It manages to wrestle all of these contradictions and absurdities into a film that will leave you unsatisfied with no conclusion as to how this situation should be resolved, and that is exactly the point. And I think it is, it is a perfect distillation of the ideas of that why the troubles happened, why the Irish Civil War happened, and all these sort of conflicts among societies, but just even more so just interpersonal relationships in your own everyday life. I think it's hilarious. I think it's sad. I think everyone in it does their absolute best, from the title actors all the way down to the absolute background cast. And I'd recommend it to everyone who. But then there would be content warnings as well. Go back to listen to the original review for that, because it's also, fairly bleak and, yes, dark. But in almost the complete opposite feeling, Jonas, you chose Everything Everywhere All at Once. Why did you choose that?
Okay, so I'll talk just quickly before I talk about that. It was an easy pick, right? For me, this was a really easy pick, and I think Everything Everywhere All at Once absolutely stands out amongst the films I reviewed last year. But I think I still watched some really incredible films last year. I mean, for one, I'm a big Batman fan, and DC Marvel superhero films have gotten a bit tonally boring and bland at the moment, where they're kind of just doing the same thing over and over again, but with slightly different palette swaps. And the Batman was like, in terms of its vision and focus, it was really quite. It was quite singular in in its vision and its tone, and it really delivered something that felt like, oh man, you could only do this film with this character. And I think Robert Pattinson did a great job of portraying, Bruce Wayne the Batman. I look forward to seeing kind of where that timeline, I guess is the word, kind of develops. A Boiling Point, man, like an original, like this really great one take kitchen drama, short filmed turned feature length. Absolutely just spectacular, and brings stress to the screen in such an incredible way. Rise, Roar, Revolt, just a kind of a weird Netflix spectacle that just kind of came out of nowhere and really impressed, especially in terms of like kind of bombastic like Bollywood cinema, just really impressive. Nobody, man, really great to watch Bob Odenkirk kind of like play an action hero in his own way. Nope, incredible. And The Menu ended the year with The Menu, which in terms of like high restaurant drama, for some reason seems to be doing really well at the moment, and that is going to be relevant perhaps in what we talk about in the next episode
Part
of the
of
regular review.
illustrious genre of rich people going to an island and having horrible things happen to them.
Exactly. Yes. It's just perfect, and really hits the spot. But despite my absolute kind of like glowing opinions on all of those films, man, Everything Everywhere All at Once just nailed it for me in so many different ways. It's kind of hard to know where to begin. This was a film that, from its trailer alone was like, oh, this looks quite interesting. This looks fun. This looks different. I look forward to this. Michelle Yeoh in this film, where multiverse and timelines are they're all under threat, they're all in danger, and Michelle Yeoh just lives a seemingly normal life where she runs a laundromat but somehow is responsible for saving the world. And it felt novel, but it felt like it was just going to do some fun, interesting things. And then you watch it, and it does some fun, interesting things, but it also just manages to impress upon you so many different themes and emotionally like weighty relationships, and like like kind of narrative through points and things like that just I have watched this film several times, over and over and over again, and I would keep going back for more, honestly. There are singular moments in the film that absolutely stand out, to the point where they just I've taken them and they are my wallpapers. There are moments in this film that absolutely need to be seen in terms of like a small like, you know, a minute or two long scene where the scene is important, where the actual it's the cinematography of the moment, it's the choreography of the fight, perhaps it's the delivery of a certain character's lines or something like that. There are moments that start shine, but then there are start to finish character arcs and narratives that just by the end of them swell to these absolutely just like massive balloon size of like emotional importance and depth, and they just they don't fail at any point. I'm largely just thinking about Waymond with all of this, like Waymond, the husband of Michelle Yeoh's character in this film, just for me absolutely epitomizes one of the greatest kind of like character arcs in a film. And it's not that his character changes a lot throughout the film, he always remains the same person. It's the way our relationship as an audience change with his character, because we are shown these universes, we are shown these representations of a single person who lives so many different lives based on the things that happened to him when he was young, and how his personality, as it never changes, has done and continues to influence the people around him in a way that is just emotionally really just I don't even know what words to use to kind of describe it, but just important to me, really important to me. I love this film. This film, I used to call The Princess Bride my favorite film of all time. It's now my second favorite film of all time. Everything Everywhere All at Once absolutely snatched it from its number one position. I walked out of the cinema finding it hard to use the phrase favorite film, but it was the only way I could describe what I had just seen. And I kept watching it, I guess maybe to prove to myself, you know, did it actually deserve that place? Did it really deserve to just become my favorite film in a single watching? There's surely no way a film should do that to someone whose previous favorite film has decades of influence. And yet, here we are. I am gushing about it. I love this film from start to finish. I love it in its subtleties. I love it in its overtness. I love its comedy. I love its action spectacle. I love its influences, and I love every single kind of discussion that I've had about this film around it ever since I've seen it. And I will spend the rest of my life, I think, heralding how good this film is and how important I think it is that people experience it just once, if not dozens of times. Okay, Jamie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. What do
I
you think?
I know people who don't like this movie,
And
and it
then,
makes me think less of them.
yeah.
Like it is one of the best things to come out for definitely this year. But like it is so singularly good. Like it is it's an interesting film in that it feels long in a good way. Like the it just washes over you. It's just an intense, just beautiful experience where you feel like you'll feel every feeling through the movie, which is exactly the point. It's an overwhelming experience, and yet like a deeply like moving and enjoyable like just event. Like, I'm so glad I saw it in the cinema. I'm so glad that I was just sort of enveloped in it. There's moments where like you have moments of calm after moments of intense action, and you feel like you've been through an ordeal, but in a good way. Like in that's the point. You're supposed to have felt like that. There's moments that are just beautifully funny, but there's the only way I can describe the feeling towards the end of the movie is that of like having had a really brilliant but exhausting day out and seeing the sunset and being like, this is the perfect conclusion. I am exhausted, but in a good way. I feel like I have given everything to this, and this is the perfect ending to a perfect day. That is the feeling at the end of this movie, and I don't know if I've ever had that in another movie. It's just that feeling of it sort of coming to its conclusion and being like, yes, we've all been through this together, and it was worth it. This is something we will remember for the rest of our lives. You know, it's. I know I'm sounding like I'm having some kind of spiritual experience, but man, it's something. It's
Yeah.
really just something that nothing else does that.
It just is, and it's a film as well that it doesn't do one thing. It manages to do all of that, right? But it manages to do all of that by not just doing the same good thing from start to finish.
Mm.
It is so diverse in its portfolio of of excellence. There are the scenes of snappy, like witty comeback dialogue between like hero and villain or friend and family or things like that. The kind of the slower conversation of Jamie Lee Curtis trying to really explain why this tax information is very important to Michelle Yeoh, and being charismatic and funny while doing it, but putting on a dry, boring, humorless character while doing it. And then just moments of silence. And we know what I mean when I say that this film has moments of silence. And yet it is displayed with such confidence, and it is delivered with such just so much joy for the genre that it is enveloping itself in. And yet that moment of silence where it is being funny, it is being overtly comical in its scene, and yet it is also potentially, you are moments away from floods of like happy tears.
Confidence is the exact word. Everyone in this movie, from direction, from cinematography, all the way down to the core acting, the writing, and everything feels confident. It feels like they know exactly what they're doing. Every actor plays 7 different versions of themselves, right? Scenes which, if you explained them in the abstract, would make no sense at all. A whole universe where people have hot dogs for fingers, but it's actually a really beautiful, touching love story. And you go, that's, not possible. And that, like, everything, they are confident they went into every moment in making that film, and they were confident they were going to make gold, and they did it every single time. It's just so goddamn good.
So goddamn good. And as well, it just leaves you with a message, right? Which is like, it's just so positive. It's just so incredibly enveloped in nothing but love and inclusivity and acceptance.
But it's positive, but in a nuanced way. Like, it's positive in that sense that it understands that, like, saying it'll all be okay is a platitude, but saying the world is bigger than you know, and you only have control over the things you have, but that will be okay. And I understand the limits of that. Okay. Like, just all, it doesn't have to say it, but it understands. It's just an understanding, nuanced, subtle, just feeling of positivity that doesn't feel like someone's just trying to make you feel better, but it's someone who understands and is saying, no, look, this is how it is. It is better. You see it, don't you? You see how it is better. Yeah. So how did you feel about Banshees of Inisherin? Because you watched it after I reviewed it, so we haven't talked about it yet.
Yeah. Okay, Banshees of Inisherin. I liked it. I definitely liked it. I definitely understand why this is a film that wows and impresses and leaves such a lasting impression on people who watched it. I think performances are absolutely stellar. I mean, I just I love Colin Firth so much in this film as this kind of like just this kind of hapless Colin Farrell. Oh, did I say Firth? I bet yes, that Colin, right? I genuinely just loved his performance as this very well-meaning member of a community who never really it harms, never really does wrong. In fact, he's positively an influence, a positive influence on this community, right? Because the community is small, but he has a role in that community, and he has habits, but those habits absolutely don't harm anyone around him whatsoever. He's a perfectly kind of likable chap. And yet there are kind of subtleties to his the way that he has to navigate this social minefield that he finds himself throughout in this film, that are just, they are comical in their delivery and in their structure, and absolutely heartbreaking as well. And it's heartbreaking that the character he portrays has to navigate it. It's heartbreaking that he navigates it the way that he navigates it. Like, the choices he makes are upsetting when you see the consequences that they have. And the relationships of the people on this, in this community, on this island, they they feel like they should be just fine, but the personalities that have been written, the personalities that have been displayed, simply do not allow for that kind of all above board wholesome positiveness that one would like out of their community, because that's the nature of people in small communities. Is the fact is that there's no escape away from them. You're forced to interact with them by the sole nature that they fill a very small niche in a community that needs to be filled. And there is conflict. There is conflict within that, and sometimes the conflict is overt and loud, and sometimes the conflict is subtle, like just avoiding someone by hiding behind a wall. Um, and there's a lot of joy to be had in making, the island of Inisherin this set for this kind of drama to take place. I feel it's almost theatrical in the sense that it's almost like Shakespearean, right? To kind of set to make a kind of environment where natural drama can and will occur, and to write it as it should develop with these personalities, with these places. There's nothing that feels engineered about the situation whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely get the feeling that Martin McDonagh was a playwright and a theatre director before he was a film director, and you definitely have that feeling of that, that sort of playwright sort of i- in the dialogue and this in the way that he sets up scenes, that that every scene has a purpose, and that people talk, the way people talk is kind of naturalistic but also kind of to the point, right? And that people have snappy conversations which every word says something about the characters, that says something about the situation. And it doesn't feel, like you say, it doesn't feel outwardly like unrealistic. It doesn't feel like they're setting things up like people shouldn't be in these places. It feels naturalistic in one sense, but it also, it doesn't ever leave you lingering. You're always being brought further into the themes and into the feeling of this movie, in a quite sort of satisfying way. You never feel like you're sort of just being left hanging. Every moment is pushing this thing on and on and on, in a way that, especially with conflicts, can often feel like there is no way out, that this thing just keeps expanding on you. And the way that McDonagh makes films does that. It keeps rolling on top of you and over and over and over.
Yeah, it was for someone who doesn't have a lot of experience with Martin McDonagh, this was kind of like a perfect mission statement of what it seems like this director, the kinds of stories he wants to tell. And the performances were spot on. The fact that the fact that the island is such a simple staging ground for so much to happen on as well, I think, like, does the film so much service, because you get to you can only focus on the characters. You can only focus on their personalities. You don't need to scan the environment to get complex details about someone's living situation or their relationship with money or food or entertainment. These people, they have such a simple environment around them that a lot of that is already answered for you. So the only question left is, like, well, what decisions are they going to make? Like what words are they going to choose to say in this conversation? And what actions are they going to take based on what other people are saying to them? And those are really the only large influences on any of the characters throughout the film, is just what did someone else say? And that makes it just such a great kind of like platform to just write good character drama.
It's
And it
distilled
does that.
conflict. It's just the conflict.
Mm.
It's just the people.
Yeah, and that's really incredible. I will say I don't think I walked away with this film with the same reverence, enjoyment, with the same high opinion as perhaps yourself, and if the awards are anything to speak of, as many other people have, this film is absolutely glowing in terms of the kind of critical response, and perhaps there's just a lot there that I didn't appreciate on a first viewing, that just it either didn't hit me in the right way, or I wasn't perceiving it the way that a more critical and a more appreciative audience would perceive it.
I think I don't necessarily think it's an easy film in the way that I think that, you know, I don't think Madonna's films, well, at least, you know, it varies, but I don't think this or Three Billboards are films that are like easy films. And I'm not saying that
Mm.
in like, you know, to denigrate any other film or anything like that, but I think that it is a film that is, you know, that there's a lot going on in everything that's said, and I think that is, and that there is no wasted moment in the whole film. And I think that it sits in an awkward space between naturalism and theatrical, and that creates sort of an odd tone to it. And, you know, maybe you come away from a second viewing feeling better about it, but maybe it just isn't for everyone. And I can see that. And I think that, you know, we should move on now to picking our winner. I think that the thing that I proved this wrong with my opening joke about this film, but I do think that Everything Everywhere All at Once is for everyone. I think it is a singular experience that can be enjoyed by almost everyone. Yeah, there are some people out there who don't seem to like it, and I find that baffling. I can see someone coming out of Banshees of Inisherin and not liking it, and me going, yeah, fair enough. I really liked it, but I understand why you didn't, you know?
Yeah, I enjoyed it, but I just, you know, if we're gonna compare the two, there
And that
is
is
no
our role.
contest. There is no. Yeah, you're right. We are going to compare the two. To which I say that there is no contest. And I I will struggle. I struggle to imagine a piece of media, a film that we review in the future, that makes me feel more than Everything Everywhere All at Once did.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just clearly the best thing that came out this year, and it clearly it came out of nowhere. It there were no expectations, and it exceeded them, you know, more than anyone possibly could. You know, I just think it was so good, and it deserves to be the winner. You know, I think it's interesting when you look at, like, for example, last year's winner, Inside, which we gave it to Inside not because it was the most technically brilliant film or anything like that, but because it was the film that made sense that year. Like, it was a film of that time. It was a time capsule of being in the pandemic. But Everything Everywhere All at Once is just a universal film. Like, it's a timeless film. I think that you will watch this in 40 years, 50 years, and you'll still feel the same watching it. At least I hope so.
Mhm.
And I think it's, you know, it's above and beyond. But is it above and beyond our current reigning champion? Now, our reigning champion is not Inside. Our reigning champion is Parasite, the Korean film about the family who end up living in the house of a wealthy family that they should be working for. Um, Parasite, when it came out, was, you know, it had a similar critical reception to Everything Everywhere All at Once, but instead of it being like an out of nowhere success, It was more of a sort of building, rolling, like hype train as it appeared in Korea and people started really loving it. And then it moved over to the West and people really got into it. And it got to the point where, it was on everyone's lips. It was the film to watch. And I remember coming out of the cinema and seeing that film and thinking it was fucking great. It also has a similar honor of being one of those films where everyone loves it, apart from like one person I know who just cannot understand why people like it. Yeah, I'm kind of torn on these two films. I know you'll probably go for Everything Everywhere. Like, what do you think?
I mean, I have a very similar level of appreciation and reverence for Parasite, right? Like, it remains the ultimate champion over 2021 because we agreed that Parasite absolutely did not usurp Inside. It just in terms of its overall kind of quality and our appreciation for it. And I think there is a lot about Parasite that is absolutely still worth celebrating. It brought forward this idea to people that maybe foreign cinema might be good, which I know is a baffling concept, but like when our Hollywood centric movie culture is so fucking English and white, it took a lot of it genuinely for a lot of people was baffling that a Korean, just an idea that a non-English film is really good. What? How does that happen? And I think that kind of still is important. But man, where Everything Everywhere All at Once kind of succeeds is it manages to be not only just an incredible film, and it is English, but it is not. They are not English characters. They are not a Caucasian family. They're a sort of Chinese-born American family.
Yeah.
With a lot of mixed language, a lot of mixed culture, and then God, the influences being just like The Matrix and old like Chinese kung fu movies, and just having such a diverse delivery of like emotional stakes in its characters and in its narrative, whereas Parasite's stakes are quite singular, but they are impactful, they are amazing. But what the family goes through is it's a concept that is a lot simpler to kind of equate.
Yeah, I think that Parasite is a brilliant movie, and it is a brilliant snapshot of the time it was made, and it's still relevant. It's still fully relevant right now. Everything Everywhere is something genuinely new and genuinely different and genuinely beautiful. It's just it's an emotional roller coaster in all the best ways. I think it probably is the champ.
For me, it's the champ as well because I think you take away so many just incredibly lovely, positive things from it that are complex, but I think they put a smile on your face. I think they fill you with a warmth and a joy. Not to mention, by the way, it's the best multiverse film we reviewed last year, and it wasn't the only multiverse film that we reviewed last year.
God, at some point we'll do a special where we pick the worst movies, games, and TV shows, because we do that for the randomizer, but we don't do it for the main ones because it feels a bit cruel. But at some point, maybe, if we do a special episode at some point, we can go back and try and pick the worst thing we reviewed, because Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness might be up there.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I didn't have such a negative, but I understand why anyone would say that. Like, I don't refute the negative whatsoever.
All right, speaking of trash, we're going to move on to the final award, the final two awards of the show. As you know, if you're a regular listener or viewer of the podcast, at the end of every month's podcast, we watch and we randomly pick a Netflix movie to watch, and then we talk about it the following month. And as is tradition at the end of the award show, we are going to pick the very best and the very worst Netflix Randomiser movie we watched this year. So up on the screen are your eligible movies. This year we ended up watching Den Store Badadag, Thomas and the Royal Engine, Friends with Money, Veerdas, Outside In, the Lockdown Special, Surge, Kevin Hart's Guide to Black History, Smolensk, Jeff Dunham Beside Himself, Sebastian Maniscalco, Why Would You Do That, Awake, Amateur, and Tom Segura, Mostly Stories. This was the year of stand-up specials, with 5 out of the 12 being stand-up specials, if you count Kevin Hart's Guide to Black History, which I do. We watched Smolensk, the far-right conspiracy movie. And then on the similar side of the political spectrum, Thomas and the Royal Engine. Jonas, was there anything that stood out to you, either for good or for ill? Actually, let's start with the good. We'll start positive and then we'll work our way down. Is there anything that stood out for you positive there?
Is it rude to just say no? Is it, do I need to elaborate on that feeling more?
All right, well, I'll go with a positive. Surge was okay. Surge was a movie about a guy who has some kind of mental illness and has sort of like an aggressive breakdown. It wasn't the most sensitive movie about mental illness, but it was interesting. It wasn't
It was
bad.
our movie about mental breakdown.
It was it was energetic. It was entertaining for its part. It wasn't too bad, Amateur, I don't remember anything about Amateur, and that's a positive.
Start at 0 and anything and just assume that they're all bad and then find the good.
Friends with Money was okay. Friends with Money was the movie with Jennifer Aniston, and she was like a cleaner, I think.
Yep, she was.
It was inoffensive. It was fine. I don't remember anything about Den Store Badadag. What was that?
Yeah,
Let me just give
that was the great day at the beach where the man,
God,
the
yeah.
abusive, weird, not abusive, but just weird fucking dad family.
I will say right now, Den Store Badadag doesn't appear on this list. It's not good. It's not bad. It's a weird old movie we experienced, and it just goes in its own category somewhere else. And we just don't count it for the purposes of dealing with this. How's that sound?
But I feel like we should discuss why it's the worst. No, okay. Well,
it's not the worst thing on this list by far, but it's also,
you're right.
It's clearly not the worst thing on this list.
It does some weird fucking shit, and
so chat is saying, wasn't Den Store Badadag the one where the kid watches his parent have sex? Yes, it is that film. It's the film where his dad tries to feel up his mum whilst he's in the room. It's also this
whilst he's in the bed.
It's also the film where they go to the beach, hence the Great Day at the Beach English title of the film. They go to the beach, and at one point he just finds this naked girl. He's a child. He finds another naked child, a girl. They just wander into the woods for a bit, and that's just a scene that just happens, and then it just carries on. I think that film was, fucking weird, like all over the place, but it had like a coherent theme. It was about the idea of a boy sort of realizing that like he had a blinkered view of where his place in society, and then when they go to the beach and they're exposed to other people, he realizes that his dad ain't all shit. It was I think it had a coherent view, and it was not awfully put together film, but it was just fucking weird. And there are other films on here or other things on here that were like, genuinely better put together or just genuinely offensive. And I don't think this is either of them.
Yeah. it's a weird fever dream of a film, and the less we say about it, the perhaps the less of a platform we give it, the better.
Yeah, I think it should be taken out. It should be put on like a shelf in a museum. This was a film that happened, and then we move on. I think the best film on here is Surge.
Um, yeah, I mean, the sad thing about this year is like I'm not even passionate about agreeing or disagreeing with you. Can
Yeah,
I ask
the
you a
real
more
debates are
important
going to
question?
be what's the worst.
Can I ask you a more important question?
Yeah.
Of the 5 stand-up comedies
Mm,
that we have here,
yeah.
which is the best stand-up comedy? Because if it's not going to be the best film, let's at least judge it on the stand-up comedy special merit.
Um, Virdas Outside In.
Weird ass outside in. Because I'm trying to remember if I liked Sebastian Maniscalco.
Sebastian Maniscalco was super milquetoast down the line, but occasionally dipping into slightly offensive.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I remember, I mean, I guess Kevin Hart wasn't really offensive ever, but it was a bit like
Kevin Hart
just
was
dry.
totally inoffensive, but it was like the funny guy in the office who's actually not funny,
Yeah,
being like
forced, really forced.
telling a story, and you just want him to tell the story, and he's trying to be funny as he's telling the story, and you're like, I just need the information. I just
Yeah.
need to know what happened.
Yeah, just give me the
Virdas,
footnotes.
it wasn't super funny, but it was clearly aimed at an Indian audience that we weren't,
Yeah.
and the guy, you know, seemed nice. He seemed like a nice guy, and it was just kind of all right, kind of thing.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Whereas I found Jeff Dunham, Sebastian Maniscalco, and Tom Segura all to have a little bit too much punching down in their comedy, and
Sebastian Maniscalco was like sort of on the line and then occasionally would punch down. Tom Segura slowly descended, punching more down as the thing went on. And Jeff Dunham was just in a cesspit. He arrived in a cesspit and then dug the cesspit deeper as he went along, and then kept turning to the crowd, going, why will no one let me be in this cesspit? People just don't understand that this cesspit is actually highbrow comedy. he was he was the worst. Just awful.
I was then going to ask, what do you think the worst stand-up comedy is? Because I think we know. I think we have an idea in our heads of what we're going to say the worst film is, and it's not one of the stand-up comedies. But maybe we should tackle that first.
Jeff Dunham is the worst comedian I've ever seen, and actively feels like a hateful man.
James, he's not a comedian. He's a ventriloquist. He's a ventriloquist.
You're
James.
right. He is the worst ventriloquist I've ever seen, and I don't like ventriloquists.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I remember being a teenager and him having the whole Ahmed, I'll kill you thing.
I
And I
remember that
remember,
too. I remember.
and I remember having friends who I'm 30 years old now, and I might describe some of those friends as conservatives, as loving Jeff Dunham's like portrayal of a terrorist comedy skeleton thing, and then watching Jeff Dunham develop so many stereotype characters that are just made to embody and then prey upon the perceived negative qualities of groups of minorities other than just a healthy normal person, like generally just predatory comedy is kind of what I would almost describe it as.
We were the generation that had Little Britain, right?
Fuck yeah, we were.
We were the generation that had Little Britain. that doesn't nearly make me feel as grimy as Jeff as the fact that I know at one point I laughed as a teenager at Ahmed the Dead Terrorist. Right?
Yeah.
That is the grimiest. Watching Jeff Dunham beside himself for this podcast and remembering that I had laughed as a teenager at Ahmed the Dead Terrorist was a harrowing experience.
Yeah, that's good. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
seeing
good.
that fucking thing come out of that box. Oh, yeah. But so the best one, the best movie that, that we were forced to watch this year, what do you think it is?
All right, Surge, fine,
I think it's
Surge.
Surge. I think it's
I
Surge.
would only argue the only other film I could possibly even try and argue, right, is Amateur, because it's a nearly competent basketball
Oh, it was the
story.
basketball one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it just has that sort of like Deus Ex Machina at the end of him being like, "I'm off to Europe," and his parents are like, "Cool, we're gonna be millionaires."
And then I decided to fund a basketball school scholarship.
You're right. This has suddenly become quite difficult because Surge was a competently put together film with a fairly decent main actor, but a kind of dodgy premise and a kind of meandering like film. Amateur, kind of like cheesy, chunky thing, but it was fun and it did dyscalcular in a way I've never seen a film do, but that was genuinely good.
Hmm. Amateur had things going for it. I understand why Amateur was greenlit. I understand why Amateur was filmed and made and delivered to people. It's a cautionary tale about the school, high school, middle school level professional athletes, in basketball, and the predatory practices that are used to entice these players into like dead end sports careers that are actually being kind like funded, and they're being exploited and preyed upon by basically like this kind of money circulating sports thing that never goes as far as to be nationally like famous, but influences people who would otherwise have had potential careers, and it gets stripped away from them by the fact of these loopholes that people exploit on their behalf. Worth a story worth telling, and then a weird ending to try and
I think it's a quite American film.
it's
And
very
and
American,
I think
very
if we
American.
were American, we would have maybe got along with it better because I think it is this idea of like young athletes being exploited by the system, as they point out in the film, isn't so much a problem in Europe. So this idea that like because they're not allowed to pay young athletes because
Something
if
like
they
that,
yeah because if they go pro then it gets weird or whatever. So they're not allowed to get paid despite the fact that it's like a multi-million-dollar industry. That is a uniquely American problem, and the other side of it, like his dad having like head injuries from playing American football and things, like it's an incredibly American problem. And to European eyes, it just kind of feels like a weird film about people exploiting a child for no good reason. And then he's
yeah.
like, I'm off to Germany. And you're like, oh, no, it was like Poland or somewhere. And it was like, yeah, it seems weird that that's your like Shangri-La and really, but fine. Yeah.
I just want to revisit the line, if we were American, and I just want to superimpose my own response to that. We'd be racist. We'd hate it.
We'd love Jeff Dunham.
Yeah, we'd love Jeff Dunham, and all these other films would be awful. No, it's fine, but I do think that as a movie, Surge is kind of more interesting, right?
Surge
Like,
definitely is a movie. And
yeah.
I think that it has that going for it. Yeah.
You know what I can say about Surge on this podcast? It is a movie.
Yeah. I think that probably that in some years that is enough.
That it kind of has to be, I think.
All right. Surge wins.
Surge is our best film, reluctantly.
Surge wins best film. Worst film. So
You gonna say it or am I?
well, okay, there's a few options here. It's not as clear cut as you think it is. Smolensk is probably the one you're thinking of, right?
It is. Yeah.
So Smolensk, for anyone who doesn't know what it is, it on the surface is a film about a conspiracy to bring down a plane in somewhere in Poland, I think. But in reality, is right-wing propaganda to like support some kind of like fascist right-wing view of a famous tragedy in Poland. And it's like it really selectively edits news footage and it clips it in with their own fake like interviews and things. It's a drama, it's not a documentary, but it plays it like it's using real footage when it clearly isn't at points. I looked up a bunch of it afterwards. They like, take stock footage completely out of context to try and make it look like people were angry about certain things that they weren't and stuff. It is fucking grimy. It's genuinely shouldn't be on Netflix, and it's surprising that it is. It's probably going to win. I want to put in a obviously we've talked about how awful Jeff Dunham is and how Tom Segura isn't great. I want to put in an honorable mention for Awake, which is one of the trashiest horror films I've seen in a long time, or like, apocalypse films where everyone can't sleep and it's just it's just his main character who doesn't really seem to have any effects from this apart from when she does, and like is super distrustful of the government for no reason. So Miss Emily Jane in chat says day 5. There was a Rooster Teeth, the YouTube group, made a series called Day 5. I think this is what you're talking about, which was about people who couldn't sleep. And when I was watching this film, I was like, I swear I know this idea. And Awake didn't execute on it at all. They basically made a zombie movie, but they replaced zombies with tired people.
Yep.
And nothing else. They didn't adjust any of the rest of the plot. Smolensk is a dangerous film, but Awake is an unnecessary film.
Yeah, and worst of all, they're both boring.
They're both boring. They're
both really quite
boring.
dull uses of your time. Smolensk being 2 hours long. Awake.
I know that we want to pick one of these two, or more particularly we want to pick Smolensk, but and I know we've talked about it already, but I really want to maybe steer us towards Jeff Dunham, just because this stand-up special, it's sort of he's so fucking gleeful that he has a stand-up special. It's so clearly something that makes him feel like he's a big fucking man, and I hate that. I hate that Netflix have made him feel like a big fucking man.
What was it? Beside Himself. That's the one we watched. Yeah.
Yeah.
He does this really annoying thing throughout the show where he has clearly performed around the world in front of different audiences, right? Like he's got international fame, and he's been doing this for a long time.
A long time.
And obviously when he started doing it, he got YouTube clips, and then the YouTube clips obviously got a lot of positive feedback because the people who don't like the clips will just move on with their lives, and the people who do like the clips will spend the rest of their time championing his content, right? And then, he goes out to the world and does all these live shows, and I'm sure he finds a smaller bit of negative feedback, but he finds a large amount of people who feel like this man represents views and things that they cannot say. He becomes a mouthpiece for basically quite a racist, right-winged audience, is just the truth. And it's just like, it's 2019. It's just before the lockdown before he does this, right? And he delivers all of this fucking content like, well, if you're here in the audience, you're probably one of those right-winged people that likes my racism. But before I say every clearly racist thing, I'm just going to ask for everyone to cheer if they like racism with a cleverly disguised joke. Oh, you all cheered. Excellent. Well, now I'm empowered.
The grimiest thing, the most upsetting thing he did in that show was when he had the racist jalapeno puppet. And he goes, "Some people say I shouldn't be seen talking to you." As if this puppet is a real person that he didn't make up to stereotype Mexican people, right? As if he didn't as if when he talks to the puppet, it isn't himself. And I get that it's a joke, but it's also a way of being like, some people say I shouldn't be doing this joke because it's too woke, but you all get it, don't you? It's like, not too woke, sorry, it's too anti-woke, or they're too woke for this joke or whatever. And I just, it's just so infuriating. And I think that he is, you know, I can a sort of racist comic or a, you know, awful right-wing comic, fuck it, you know, whatever, you know, I hate them, I don't want to watch them, I don't want them to be around, but whatever. But the people who claim that it's our problem, that the people who don't like that stuff, like that we're the problem, that we're the ones who are saying, oh, you can't say this, you can't say that because it's, you know, the cancel culture shit. No, fuck off. And that is his whole set. It's just maddening. Yeah. I'm angry I had to watch that movie in a way that Smolensk felt like people wrote a bullshit right-wing message and then just sent it out into the world. Yeah, it's bad, it's propaganda or whatever, but Jeff Dunham just makes me angry. Yeah.
I think there's something about it as well where we don't really have a relationship with the story that Smolensk is trying to tell.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
we do have a very close relationship with the groups of people that Jeff Dunham is harming. I'll just say that, harming with his style of comedy. You know, the fact that people just going to walk away from that and say, Chinese folks do be like that. Or, man, I can't wait to tell some poor, like, frontline part-time shop worker who I think is Mexican, some of the jokes I heard about them being Mexican in their face when they can't walk away from me because of their job. And it's just like, kind of disgusting that, you know, it just self-perpetuates. Like, it just becomes it's just this kind of circle jerk of just awful stereotyping.
I think that's it. I think that we both know people who liked this kind of humor and never grew out of it, and I think that and those people, I find it hard to be around.
Like, I like the way that you said people, the way that Jeff Dunham's audience might say people about minorities.
But like, you know, I find it hard. Like, I think it has an effect, and I think it has a significantly negative effect, and I think that kind of rhetoric has an even worse effect when it's masked under the idea that we're just telling a joke, and I think that you know, I think that Smolensk is dangerous, but it's no more dangerous than just saying those things. Like, Smolensk is clearly shouldn't be on Netflix. Jeff Dunham beside himself is in a weird state where it is like stand up and acceptable, but definitely isn't. And it's Jeff Dunham unfortunately ends up falling into the category of taste, whereas Smolensk is clearly propaganda. And I think that's why Jeff Dunham is worse.
Yeah, like one is like political, like has like a political kind of message and intention, And yeah, the other one is like, it's just trying to make you laugh,
Yeah.
which is
Oh, if you're
kind
not
of
laughing, it's just, you just don't get it. It's like, no,
kind of more
I do get it.
annoying
I do
to
get it. And I get the
yeah.
consequences. And that's the problem. It's the
Jamie,
people who laugh who don't get it.
Jamie, we've gone on a really long time about like, the worst random film, but tell me, why aren't we talking about Thomas and the Royal Engine just real quick?
Thomas and the Royal Engine was fine.
It was.
It was fine. I really don't have anything to say about it because it was fine.
Yeah.
It's something I would
I,
show my kids if I had any.
I just felt that we have talked about almost everything on this list to a degree. So Thomas and the Royal Engine, you're fine. You're fine.
It was fine.
I don't recognize that weird celebrity at the beginning, who like read from a Thomas picture book.
It was Prince Harry, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But when we reviewed it, I went, "Who's that guy?"
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because I didn't know what he looks like. Now he's on that fucking book cover everywhere, so now I know what he looks like.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was fine. I think my favorite thing about it is that it was short. Whereas these other things weren't.
Jeff Dunham, I
Um,
think, has to take it. I think
you,
Jeff
you,
Dunham
you
is
oh,
the
you
worst.
think it's Jeff Dunham is the worst?
I think it's the worst.
Okay, I'm honestly not going to disagree with you. Left to my own devices, I think I would have just picked Smolensk, but we've talked through it. I think it is worth it to put that red mark on Jeff Dunham.
All right.
And
Jeff
that way
Dunham
we
gets the
can
red mark.
communicate proudly that movie was fucking shit and we hate it.
Okay.
Movie,
But
yeah.
what's the best of the best and what's the worst of the worst? So our current best of the best for movies. Serge might be in with a good shot. So currently the best random Netflix movie we've been given is Howl's Moving Castle. Do you think Serge can beat that?
Jamie, why don't you say first? Why don't you say if you think Surge is better than Howl's Moving Castle? I fucking dare you.
Every year, something is going to have to go up against Howl's Moving Castle.
And because it's randomly selected, I don't know. But
the likelihood that something is going to come up that will beat Howl's Moving Castle. Howl's Moving Castle is not nearly my favorite film, but it's a very good film. And the likelihood that something with the sheer amount of shit that's on Netflix.
the chance that we can randomly pull out a film that beats one of the most critically successful, impressed upon, universally loved animated films of all time, appropriate for all ages, animated and delivered by Titan Studio Ghibli. It's probably next year's the year, definitely.
Especially considering that Netflix is just so full of shit. The quantity of shit on Netflix is so
You're
high.
Right.
Yeah,
You're right. Yeah. If you took the upper echelon of great films and like the lowest of bad films, you'd find more of the bad films are on Netflix than of the good films.
I think if you set like, I think that the percentage of films or the quantity of films that score lower than 50% on audience rating versus the ones that score above 50%, the lower than 50% films are the sheer majority of the service. I think that it's just a like cesspit of shit with like a couple of like beautiful nuggets.
Should we unsubscribe from Netflix and do like an Apple TV randomizer or something?
This is the thing. It's Disney Plus, and I hate to be a Disney shill. We talk about it when we
hate to be a Disney shill.
But we talk about it when we end up reviewing like 6 Marvel movies back to back to back, and how much they control like all of the media like ecosphere, and it's really bad that they do. But Disney Plus has a lot of really good stuff on it.
It's got some bangers, yeah.
It's got some bangers on it. And Netflix is just progressively getting worse and worse and worse. And I regularly look at the front page of Netflix and think, there's nothing on here I want to watch. Or something is announced as being a new Netflix thing. The only reason I watched that 90s show is because I enjoyed that 70s show. And that's the only thing that's come out on it in recent memory that I've been like, yeah, I'm going to make time for that. And that wasn't even that good.
Jamie, do we consider randomizing films from a wider pool? Do we diversify our options?
No. Because I think part of the fun
Damn it. Fuck.
is the fact that we end up watching so much shit.
I thought real change was going to happen here tonight, folks. I thought we were going to really make a difference. All right, Jamie, all-time worst. Howl's Moving Castle is definitely the all-time best, but what's worse? Is it 2020's Snervous, our current reigning champion of worst random film? Is it Temple? If you don't remember, by the way, Snervous was that like YouTube, that film about that YouTube guy celebrity. I forgot his
Tyler
name.
Oakley.
Tyler Oakley. Temple was the awful horror about these like American tourists going to Japan and encountering this weird monster and the weird main character like filming everything, including his friends having sex. Or is it Jeff Dunham beside himself?
So it's really between Snervous and Jeff Dunham, because last year we determined that Temple wasn't as bad as Snervous.
Sorry, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yes, it is just the Snervous.
But I will say Snervous is bad, and both of them are self-serving, right? Snervous is bad. Snervous is a vanity project by Tyler Oakley. But there are moments in Snervous where you see moments of genuine vulnerability of him, where you see him talking to his dad, who's a homophobe, where you see him like dealing with like the kind of crushing like pressure of the fans that he has and things like that. Jeff Dunham is just pure vile, right? And it's Tyler Oakley, at least when this film was recorded, he's not that old. Like he's like a 20-something. Jeff Dunham should know better. Jeff Dunham is too far into his life to be this man without being punished for it.
So, I guess we're saying that Snervous is the worst thing we've ever seen, and Jeff Dunham is actually, in comparison, quite forgivable.
Because we're hoping that if we make Snervous the worst one, that Tyler will change his life around, where it's too late for Jeff.
Yeah. Okay, Jeff Dunham is the all-time worst Netflix random film that you and I have seen, and let's just be clear about this. That's not out of 12. It's not out of 24. It's not out of 36 films, because we've also got like another 10 films from 2019. So it's like the worst random film that we've seen out of 46 films ish.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, we never really did throw in the original 10.
No, you're right, but I'd like to think I'm pretty confident that we can look back at that list and still know that Jeff Dunham is worse than our backlog.
Yeah, probably. Aloha was pretty wild as our first movie.
Aloha was actually, I think Aloha was a good starting point, because it was like neither of us would choose to watch this, but it didn't harm us to watch it. It was just kind of like, why do we have to watch this and talk about it?
I remember coming out of Aloha and thinking, this was the wildest fucking movie. It's so bad, and yet it was like hilariously bad. And I was like, wow, I'd be amazed if we got worse things than this. Right? This is pretty down there. And now looking back on it, I'd watch Aloha again in a heartbeat. Like I genuinely put that on and watch that with people.
Yeah.
Like I would be like, guys, come around my house. I'll set up an evening. We'll watch Aloha together.
Let's watch Aloha. Yeah. Man, yeah, we had it good in 2019 when we did this, and now we know pain.
Man, we watched Last Action Hero in 2019.
If you could, would that be your all-time best film?
No, Howl's Moving Castle would still be better, but Last Action Hero would be a close second. That is a good film. That's a good film.
All right. Well, here's hoping that 2023 offers us some, I don't know, just some fucking stuff that doesn't make us feel like absolute shit after watching
we did have a good start. We had what's her name? That stand-up special that was pretty good. So I haven't watched this month's one, but we'll get to that.
What was it? Old I've
Old
forgotten her
Baby.
name. Old
Yeah.
Baby. But I have forgotten her name. Maria something.
Maria Bamford.
Maria Bamford,
Old
Old Baby.
Baby.
That was genuinely very good. And if you want to hear about that, then
This is jumping ahead. This is jumping ahead to next year's awards.
yeah.
For now, we're going to finish up there. Thank you for listening. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, and thank you for watching. If you're watching us live on, as I said, the most glamorous night of the year. Thank you to all our winners and our loser. It was excellent.
Don't let's not thank the loser.
No, let's not thank Jeff Dunham. Your trophies will be in the mail. And yeah, here's to another year of excellent movies, TV shows, games, and just Netflix hopefully getting its act together. What would be really nice is if there's just sudden uplifting in the quality and we could just start getting good stuff.
If Netflix just completely pressed delete on its like bottom 30% of films in terms of quality and ratings, and then just got good films as well. Like if it could just do good films, that would be good. No, that would be nice.
I mean, just deleting the bottom 30% of the movies would help us.
It would help us a lot.
So do that, Netflix.
Or you could just let us pick from. No,
Nope.
I'm being.
This is how it works.
I want change, and I'm going to lobby for this.
Look, we've got that brand deal. We've got to keep that going.
You've got that hot sponsorship somewhere in the mail.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, everybody, and catch us for the regular podcast next time. We'll see you later. Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you for watching, everybody. This is really good fun. Thank you for joining us.
So fucking long.
Yeah, it always is. It always is. It always is. This is supposed to be the short one as well.
This is supposed to be the short one. That's what genuinely shocks me, but we're passionate people.
Thank you for following Emily Jane. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Hello, Emily, by the way. Thanks for watching.
Normally, I try and avoid saying the real name when I see usernames I recognize, but it's in your username. So hello.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for joining, everybody. This was good fun. Oh, I'm tired. We're not doing streams tomorrow because I am at a work do, but we'll be back on Thursday. Hopefully, I know we keep having to cancel, but hopefully, Aviary Attorney will be back on Thursday. I think Luke and Beth are both about, so come join us for that Thursday at 8 p.m. And then next week we'll be back to normal. I think the next actual podcast is in 2 weeks. Yes, in 2 weeks.
Yep. We're on March the 7th, I believe.
Yep. I can give you some insider knowledge. But I started playing Atomic Heart today. I'm an hour in. It's not great, but we'll see if it gets better as we go along. I'm going to try and play according to Time to Beat. It's about a 20-hour game if you don't do all the side content. So I should be able to get a fair chunk of it done.
I've heard the best thing I've heard about that game is the fact that it's a AAA game that came out on PC and it technically it doesn't shit itself on day one.
So there's a reason for that. You know what the reason is? So Atomic Heart, the big selling point, the big thing that about Atomic Heart was that Nvidia were using it as the system seller for its ray tracing cards, right? All of the Nvidia had loads of videos that were like Atomic Heart. It had the robot with the big like glowy ball head rotating. It had like the technology of like bouncing rays between the mirrors and stuff like that. Atomic Heart released with no ray tracing, and when asked, the dev said, "We don't know when it's going to come in." It released in a stable state because they couldn't release the main selling feature of the game.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And I remember getting into it and going into the graphic settings, because I knew one of the things I wanted to do with this game was turn on ray tracing, because I bought a 30 series card. I remember seeing the ads for this when it was initially out. I was like, I want to see that game in ray tracing on my fancy ray tracing card, right? I booted it up, no ray tracing settings. I thought, that's weird. Maybe they're so confident with ray tracing that it's just on by default. You can't even turn it off. And I was like, this game is running buttery smooth. I don't even know how to turn on DLSS on this game. It must just do it by default. It must be so confident that it's working that it just runs it. No, doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. And then it forces you to spend 40 minutes walking around a plaza and engaging in cutscenes. It's an interesting game. It's trying to be BioShock, but I'm not sure it knows what made BioShock good. But I want to see how it goes over the next few hours.
Yeah, I'm gonna put some time into it, but I am focusing probably on another very big release this week that did have loads of technical issues on PC, Wild Hearts.
Okay, I haven't heard anything about Wild Hearts, so
It's EA basically trying to make their own Monster Hunter.
okay. Well, a group of friends, another group of friends. I have other friends.
No, you don't.
We're going to be playing some Monster Hunter together, so I'll be able to rewind and chat to you about Monster Hunter.
Can't believe it. I spend so much time trying to get people to play Monster Hunter. They play it 2 years later.
Yeah.
Now that I'm playing Wild Hearts, you'll play that in 3 years.
I'll give you a spoiler for my rewind of that as well. They still haven't learned how to do UIs. And it fucking
No
sucks.
Yakuza. Miss Emily Jane, I will play that new Yakuza game. I will probably play it in March and possibly talk about it in April. The only issue is that I just reviewed Yakuza 7 on the podcast. And if I just play one of the Like a Dragon games every month on this podcast, I'm basically going to be reviewing the same really good game every single month. And Jamie will stop respecting me.
Well, or it'll be really easy for me. I'll just use the same questions every time. So the side quests, I hear the side quests are really good in this game. Can you tell me about the side quests? There's probably one about a man pissing in a river or someone shooting at a tree.
Yep, exactly. Just that is the game.
I'm looking at Wild Hearts now.
It's fun.
Its website looks a lot like, makes me think of Guild Wars.
Really? Oh, it does have the brush strokiness kind of
Yeah.
aesthetic thing going on.
It feels like they've directly nicked their website. Interesting.
The splotches and things like that. Yeah, it's honestly, the gameplay is really fun and good. It's simpler than Monster Hunter, and that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I did the tutorial for Monster Hunter Rise. Is that the one that I'm playing? Yeah.
Yeah.
I did the tutorial for that because I needed to play multiplayer on Monday, and I don't know how to play the game.
Yeah, fair.
So it was like, here's your bird. Here's how to call your bird. I was like, great. And
the
then,
bird doesn't matter in Monster Hunter Rise at all, but there you go.
Great. And it took
Yeah,
time to tell me about it.
I'm glad you know how to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna head off. Thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, I'll be back on Thursday. Are you going to be streaming it all this week?
You know what? I might be able to stream tomorrow, and if I do, I'm going to be playing Naraka Blade Point, which is a Chinese martial arts battle royale game that I've been kind of getting into. It's cool. It's interesting. I like it. I'm trying not to spend money on it because it really wants me to spend money on it. Can you believe it? Otherwise, who knows when our next stream, but please do just follow me on Twitter. I suppose Twitter's actually a dead platform now.
Also, Sylvan and this will, I don't know when they intend to do it, probably around the time we would normally stream. But Sylvan has started streaming, and I'll do a shout out to them. Sylvie the Bunny, they've started streaming. They tend to stream in the similar time to you streaming, Jonas, unfortunately, but either way. But tomorrow, Sylvan has said that they might do a stream in my usual slot, with Maddie and Laura. So if you are looking for something to do at 8 p.m. on tomorrow, where we would normally be streaming Stardew, go follow Sylvie the Bunny, and they'll be streaming with the usual crowd, just without me, and you can watch them, and then we'll be back again next week like normal.
Nice.
Yeah, they had a conversation last time I had to cancel on a Wednesday stream. They had a conversation about Laura like setting up streaming on my computer or something, and none of them could work out how to do it. But now Sylvan is actually streaming, so Sylvan has taken the initiative.
Right.
Which I
Cool.
think's cool. All right, we're going. Bye, everybody.
Yeah. All right. Good night, everyone. Happy Pancake Day. I haven't said Pancake Day once in this podcast, and that's fucked up. Today is Pancake Day. Pancake. It's 11 p.m. Go have a pancake.